Good afternoon, America on the East Coast. Good morning, America on the West Coast. I'm Robert McNeely with Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. An exciting and happy Liberation Day. Our country making America wealthy again. Going to have a great event later on today with President Trump. But soon inside the Biden FBI, finding more about the corruption of the auto pen president and his administration. We'd like to thank our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live, Colonial Metals Group. Paul Stone, the wonderful CEO, breaks it down so well when he's on our show, talking about all things when it comes to your retirement. And that best bet against inflation is gold and silver. So go to freegoldguy.com/RSBN or scan that QR code now. Shield your savings today. Please do not delay. Save your savings today and do what Warren Buffett's doing, investing in gold and silver. A great option as many of the wealthy are turning to these commodities. freegoldguy.com/RSBN and of course, Colonial Metals Group. Thank you for sponsoring us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. And Angel Paste, experience that miracle today. The cream with vitamin B in it, non-GMO, no chemicals. Of course, this is a Christian-based company in Spring, Texas, just off of the Gulf of America. They hire veterans. They love this great country. So check out all of their options and the amazing miracle at angelpaste.com, from a mosquito repellent to a men's line of a facial spray to make you look glowing and ready to go to paint the town red. And that will be at angelpaste.com. A wonderful experience for you and yours, whether it be men or women. Great lines and products for everybody, including their immunity line, the orange, filled with vitamin C. Again, no chemicals, non-GMO. Experience the miracle today, angelpaste.com. How about Lean, a great sponsor at the network, this wonderful supplement that will trim fat like Doge trims the waist. So go to takelean.com, use code RSBN, and we know that yo-yo dieting can be very unhealthy for you. So whether that leads to spikes in blood sugar, diabetes, also just not being successful with the diet in the long run, this supplement will help you with your already good plans with exercising, with calorie counting, things of that nature. So this can help you to accompany those healthy practices. This is not an injection like some big pharma prescriptions, but rather a supplement, all natural, healthy for you at home. Get this code today, RSBN, 20% off. I want to gift you with this, takelean.com. Trim fat like Doge trims waist. Code RSBN. Thank you for sponsoring us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. And of course, Kalshi. You probably saw them yesterday with, of course, the Wisconsin Supreme Court seat. Unfortunately, that going to the far left, Susan Crawford. But you can make these live trade bets now at kalshi.com/RSBN. Scan that QR code and see what's on deck for the next line of predictions. Who will win that Supreme Court seat? Well, sadly, it was Susan Crawford yesterday, but a victory for Wisconsin. They passed voter ID by referendum. So President Trump celebrating that victory along with Florida's 1st Congressional District and 6th Congressional District. But if you want to bet legally on all upcoming elections, kalshi.com/RSBN is your go-to guide. Scan the QR code now. Thank you for sponsoring us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. And we're grateful for so many of our sponsors, and we had the unique opportunity of checking in with Republican Red Winery. Just the other day, Matthew and I got to interview such a great, outstanding company, and it's so interesting because for winemaking, it could be a liberal trend, especially in the Golden State of California, but great to have these patriots fighting so hard for the future not only of winemaking in America, but for great patriots to spend their hard-earned dollars where it matters, knowing that it won't only just go to a great company, but also to conservative and Republican causes. So we'll toss that over to that interview now for your viewing pleasure.
Joining us right now on Right Side Broadcasting Network is the owner and founder of Republican Red Winery, Paul Johnson. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on Right Side.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Definitely. I know that this one's very popular. This is a Pinot Noir, or is this the red blend?
That's our Pinot Noir. So we have a Pinot Noir We have a Second Amendment Cabernet, and we have a Drain the Swamp Chardonnay, and we also have some sparkling wine that we sell. But that one is our best seller, and it's kind of obvious why. People really love the 45th and 47th president. So it's been a good success story for us.
And I have the sparkling here, also aptly named 45, 47, both tremendous options. Paul, talk to us about the tariff situation and how that does affect the wine industry.
Yeah, it affects us a lot. So if you dig in at all into the wine industry right now, you'll see that as a whole, the industry is hurting real bad, especially if you're a farmer. And so my family in particular, where I came from, is second generation wine grape grower primarily. And growers across the country, especially, California is the largest wine growing state in the union, are hurting bad. And if you look at the shortage in the wine industry of what growers produce and are left on the vines, it's roughly the same as what is imported into the country. So from my point of view, if we were to, these tariffs stopping the imports would really help the American farmer. And so, we have family friends that go back to started in the 70s who have nowhere to sell their grapes. And so I'm a big proponent of the tariffs. I know there's going to be some short-term, issues with trade and economy and stuff like that. But in the long term, I think it could be a really great thing.
And a lot of people agree with you. As Liberation Day, I know April 2nd, but also, sir, I understand that your company is undergoing a rebrand as well. So can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, it was real easy to sell our bottles through the election. There's such a fever around politics, and especially around President Trump and getting into the office. And so we took kind of our success through that and have grown the brand. We're going to do a little brand refresh and kind of focus a little more on lifestyle. And the mission of the brand really is when you get a bottle and you put it on the table, it says a bit about who you are, kind of signals to the room in a little more subtle way of your belief system. And there's yet to be a time where you put that bottle down on a table and it does not start a conversation. So what I love about wine is you enjoy it with friends and family around a meal, and just the label itself will start, meaningful conversations. And so that's really what the brand's about. And as we go through this rebrand, we're moving it away just, kind of from this last election to, broader issues and, touching on, and fun stuff like Doge and the Gulf of America and even kind of the Maha movement. And so we've sourced, for instance, for that, we've sourced some organic grapes and are kind of doing this Vino Maha label that'll be real fun. And, when you join our wine club, you'll receive wines every few months, and we're constantly changing out the labels in such a way that when you put it on the table, it says a bit about who you are and starts a great conversation.
Can you speak on the Maha movement within wine? Because what I find fascinating, whether you are in Italy, France, Spain, compared to the United States, different regulations and growing rules when it comes to so many different varietals. I believe with Chianti, they can't actually water those fields themselves. There has to be rainwater coming down from the sky. So if you're in Tuscany, for example, how has government, perhaps over-regulation, really affected your wanting to use these organic grapes in your products?
Yeah, I think the way that the Maha movement, let me start that over. The wine industry as a whole, the way we farm is a very healthy product. If you look at it as opposed to other alcoholic products, it's generally a healthier product. If you look at the French paradox, they drink a lot of wine and yet their heart health is excellent. And so there's a lot of research into the health benefits of wine. And then from a growing perspective, I know the Maha movement, using glyphosates in farming, which is Roundup, is something that, you see the public is not real interested in. using products that have Roundup in it. And the wine industry as a whole has done a very good job of moving away from those harsh chemicals in the farming and moving into it is kind of a more natural product. And the whole industry as a whole kind of moves that way. So really, wine is a shining example of kind of an alcoholic beverage for the Maha movement, really.
And I'm looking forward to seeing some of the other labels as well. You said Doge, Maha, the Gulf of America. I can't wait to see that one. That's going to be pretty cool. These are great ideas, and the artwork is fabulous on here. So I guess the question is, I mean, how did you get to where you are today in the sense of mixing politics with a beverage and being a part of a company? What's been your walk like?
Like I said, I'm a second generation grower. I've been on the farming side my whole life. And my dad always told me, whatever you do, never start a winery. Don't do it. Because if you're a big winery, if you try and go through grocery stores, you're competing with Gallo and Constellation, and you'll never get the shelf space. It's a losing game. And if you stay small, you're one of 50 tasting rooms in Napa or Paso or Carmel by the Sea. And either way, it's a tough game. And so what he hadn't considered, though, is e-commerce. And so through my model, I decided I'm going to connect with people, not about the vineyard, not about us and what we do in the vineyard, but we're going to connect with people where they're passionate. And that's the power of social media, is you can find people that are very passionate about, what I'm passionate about, which is, I was born and raised in a farming family. We're conservative, my whole family's Republican. And I felt this was a way to use our product to just start conversation. And it really started because I was pissed off about how the media was portraying Republicans, conservatives, like we're a bunch of heartless bigots. And I thought, what better way to show the real side? And what we're developing a documentary called Shades of Red, which shows the authentic side of the Republican Party and day to day what the values are. And it's so different than what's portrayed in the media. And I just felt wine was a great way it's a great medium to have that conversation.
Just a fantastic art form. And what's that like, Paul, really to be in an industry that seemingly is more left of center? Of course, California is dominant in wine production in America. Of course, you can find wine, really across all of this great nation. We see that in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I think about Merlots in Michigan. But what's it like to be an outspoken conservative in this world?
You quickly realize that you're a minority in California. And actually, I would say on the farming side, most people are conservative. When you're tied to the earth and living that type of a lifestyle, you tend to be a little more grounded, pardon the pun. But once you get into the winery side, especially up in Napa and Sonoma, and a lot of them are along coastal California, which, if you're a member of a wine club, I suggest you go look and see if they have a DEI, go look at their social media, because chances are they are run by the liberal mob. And I run into it all the time. It took me, not a single marketing company that works with wineries in California would take us on. Even if they kind of like the idea, they said, we can't touch this because all of our other clients would leave. We're developing a canned wine product right now, and reaching out to canning companies, just suppliers. They have turned us down just because we have the word Republican in our name. But that's why I'm doing this. That's the whole reason behind it. But yeah, California is something else. I'm in the heart of the beast, and it gives me even more reason, to want to do this, to want to start that conversation and do something about it.
Definitely playing a role in making California great again, and also having a wine that's on the right side of history. It's just awesome. When we read that and see that here on the network, it says wine for the right side. It's the truth. And you have some awesome artwork here, and the messaging's great, and the wine is awesome. So it's republicanred.com. For those of you watching right now, we have the owner of the a great company here, Paul Johnson. Sir, again, thank you so much for joining us on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
And wonderful to have Paul Johnson joining us of Republican Red. Of course, you can see their new deal there. Hope you had the chance to scan that QR code for 10% off using code RSBN. And wine does bring people together. Paul is very right about that, and he is stirring up those important conversations. So why not get a bottle of 4547 and bring it over to your best friend's house who happens to be liberal? It'll be fun. So a wonderful product. I've tried a couple of theirs, 4547, the red blend, also the sparkling champagne, a great outlet out of the Central Coast of California. Now, we'd like to thank our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. Of course, it's always a joy to interview them, as we just did with Republican Red, but also Colonial Metals Group and Paul Stone, the great CEO of this extraordinary organization. They are the best in the gold and silver business. Scan the QR code now to shield your savings. Of course, we must heed Warren Buffett's warning. Shield those savings now, scan the QR code, or go to freegoldguide.com/RSBN. With this no obligation guide, you will learn just how gold has increased in value over 7,000% since the Nixon administration went off of the gold standard. So I highly recommend you checking this out, because it's not just something that is, it's very much a necessity now. It's not just a privilege to have gold and silver in your hands. In a lot of ways, it's something you ought to do for your retirement and for your family. freegoldguide.com/RSBN. And Angel Paste. Experience the miracle today out of Spring, Texas, just off of the Gulf of America. Angel Paste Miracle Cream has many different options, whether it's the vitamin B, as you see there, the original Angel Paste ingredients that are non-GMO, no chemicals, filled with vitamin Bs for goodness on your skin. It's good for your body to absorb, get rid of those dry hands. I tried it right here on the network during the election cycle, and my dry hands, they went away instantly. So it's a great product for guys, for gals, a number of different things, whether it's a natural mosquito repellent, also their orange option for immunity, filled with vitamin C. Highly recommended. So experience the miracle today at angelpaste.com. And of course, mypillow.com/RSBN, the spring sheet sale. Those Giza Dream Sheets and the Paracails save 50% when you're shopping for the queen size Giza Dream Sheets at $29.98. mypillow.com/RSBN. Give them a call today. Do not delay. 800-836-7566. Support Mr. Mike Lindell and MyPillow today at mypillow.com/RSBN. 2,000 different items for up to 50% off of just about everything on the site. So it is a go-to. If you want a good day, a good start to your day, especially in the morning, these products will make a big difference, from pillows to slippers to those mattresses and sheets. Everything you need starts with a good night's rest, and we are thankful to Mike Lindell not only for the sponsorship, but for the possibility of him thinking about running for governor of Minnesota, because as he put it, no one can tolerate Mr. Waltz. So I think that will be very important as we look to the future of the 2026 midterms, governorships, of course, Senate and congressional races. Thank you to Mike Lindell, the fighter for free speech, the fighter for election integrity, and ultimately the guy who knows this industry best. The spring sheet sale, mypillow.com/RSBN. And as we await a hearing inside the Biden FBI, of course, more and more investigations proceeding with this House GOP hearing. We saw yesterday, Anna Paulina Luna, the courageous warrior from the 13th District of Florida, fighting hard to declassify and show what really happened with the JFK assassination, among other federal secrets. And it was a star-studded panel, including people like Oliver Stone, who don't necessarily, the famous news maker and, of course, documentary filmmaker as well. Not someone who's necessarily in line with Miss Paulina Luna, but someone who is very, very committed to this constitutional republic and to the freedom of the United States, whether they be liberal Democrat or conservative Republican. And she got praise on that panel yesterday, very bipartisan. Most of those congressmen staying on point, on topic, wanting to get to the bottom of the truth with what happened with the Warren Commission and also the JFK assassination. As we look live to the White House, today, Liberation Day, April 2nd, as promised, again, promises made, promises kept by this administration, focused on making America strong again, making America safe again, especially at the border, making America healthy again. We saw that with Secretary Kennedy and Governor Morrisey just the other day in West Virginia, but making America wealthy again. And this is how we do that. It's by the reciprocal tariffs. It's by an even playing field that will make it all the better for every country who wants to negotiate with the United States. NATO should pay their fair share. Australia should pay their fair share. Canada should stop throwing tariffs at our dairy farmers, especially in Minnesota and in Wisconsin, as we saw crucial elections there yesterday. You know, half and half. It was bad that we had a far left win on the Supreme Court, but election integrity put forward via referendum in Wisconsin, of course, in Florida. You see there the Capitol building, 2 new members to be sworn in soon. Mr. Randy Fine of Northeast Florida, the 6th District, just south of St. Augustine. And of course, we have Jimmy Patronis, the former CEO, the financial director of the state of Florida, that beautiful sunshine state, now going to Congress to replace Matt Gaetz in the 1st Congressional District along that Emerald Isle in the Panhandle. So exciting to have those 2 new voices in Congress, MAGA endorsed and supported by President Trump. Very exciting to see Florida remaining as a Republican stronghold. And this leads up now to 220 to 213. There are 2 vacancies in the House currently, but it shows you just how close this divide is and how every vote matters. And that's why Elise Stefanik of New York is staying in Congress. So we see there, of course, President Trump celebrating on Truth Social, the Trump Truths going out to share with you that information. Randy Fine wins, and that's an exciting thing. He'll be a great voice for the new generation as well, those younger folks getting into Congress. So we are soon awaiting an inside the Biden FBI House GOP hearing. And it's like each day that goes on, one more layer of the onion peeled from the Autopen Biden administration. What did he know? What did he not know? We know when Mike Johnson became House Speaker after that recall on then Speaker Kevin McCarthy, and that was led by Matt Gaetz. We know that Speaker Johnson had a heck of a time trying to get a meeting with President Biden in the Oval Office, let alone anywhere. And when he went to the White House, he was ambushed by the rest of his team, including the former vice president. When they finally left the Oval at the behest of the former president, Mike Johnson and him got into a pretty frank discussion on what he signed and did not sign. And President Biden did not seem to recall a number of different things he did sign into law or different executive orders. And he said, Mike, I did not do that. I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, sir, we can go to your secretary and we can bring that out to you. So when you're looking at this as an outsider, you wish you could be a fly on the wall in this situation. That's what's great about being in the press, because we sometimes get the opportunity to see these things work themselves out in real time, but either someone there is lying or they're telling the truth. So you have to decipher everything. And what we saw was very true through all of this was that this president, Joe Biden, was being, it was a cover-up. It was clearly that he was having a mental decline over the course of 4 years, and thank God the Autopen is gone, and that President Trump is in the office because he is someone who leads where the buck stops with him. America first, peace through strength, common sense, and you know he's ready to take on each and every day with his enthusiasm. Thank you to our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live, Colonial Metals Group. This is your go-to for gold and silver. Scan that QR code now. Shield your savings today. freegoldguide.com/RSBN. Yes, that's freegoldguide.com/RSBN. Give them a look, especially as we approach that inevitable tax day coming up in less than 2 weeks now, April 15th. Gold and silver, the best hedge and bet against inflation, also as you prepare for your retirement, or if you're ready to send your student to a great university or planning for that down the road, especially if you have young kids. Perhaps you want to send them to Auburn University, but you want to have something that will back up your finances. Colonial Metals Group, thank you to Paul Stone and this wonderful group of experts who show you the necessity that gold and silver are a must in this day and age. Against inflation, they are the best in the business. Thank you for sponsoring us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. And of course, Angel Paste. As we get into those warmer months, you still need that beauty cream, whether it's for your face, for your hands, just for your overall health. Non-GMO, no chemicals, filled with vitamin B's in the Miracle Cream. Experience that miracle today at angelpaste.com. The Lone Star State leading in this miracle from Spring, Texas, just off of the Gulf of America. They know a thing or two about mosquitoes, especially as the warmer months come our way. And they have a natural mosquito repellent. And how good is that to have at those summer barbecues? So you have to spray those poisons through the air. It might hit your food. It might hit your beverage. It's not good for your skin. It's not good for your pets, running around. So why not go with Angel Paste and their many options for those healthy remedies for you and your family members? Very, very important as we're getting into those beautiful warmer months. And thank you. Experience the miracle today at angelpaste.com. We have a new sponsor as well here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live, 1775 Coffee. This is the longevity bundle. So for $250 worth of delicious coffee with code RSBN, you get this ultimate bundle now for only $99. What a deal. 1775 and Rumble just unleashed something very big. This is the first anti-aging coffee. You can find this now at 1775coffee.com/RSBN. Of course, code RSBN. Only 1,000 available in this bundle. And you might be competing with me because I like a deal and I go after it right away. So I'll be doing that right after the broadcast. We'll see if we can get rid of all 1,000 beforehand. So I'm going to give you a head start here. This anti-aging coffee is packed into a killer longevity bundle. Again, only 1,000 available. This is not just a caffeine fix. It's infused with CAAKG. It's a breakthrough compound shown to support cellular health, boost endurance, and even reduce biological age by up to 8 years in 7 months. Sounds like a good deal as well, because I got to tell you, in this TV business, we're always looking to stay young. So inside this bundle, you're getting the longevity coffee, the ultimate rare pea berry roast, and exclusive 1775 gear that you just won't find anywhere else. Over $250 in value there, all for $99. Grab your longevity bundle today, and you will do that by going to 1775coffee.com/RSBN. Save $150. This is exclusive, and lock in your shot at a Cybertruck while you're doing that. So if that's not enough with this longevity bundle, you will also get a chance at winning a Cybertruck and $30,000 cash. We've got less than a month to enter, so go get the 1,000 available right now and enter for that $30,000 prize and the Cybertruck. It's your long-lived way to living a balanced life, and let's shorten it by 8 years in 7 months. What a deal. I mean, it's only beneficial for you, the viewers at home. 1775coffee.com/RSBN, the newest sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. And there's a live look at the White House. We'll be doing somewhat of a combo broadcast today, of course, inside the Biden Autopen FBI, the corruption we saw with Crossfire Hurricane. It wasn't necessarily Republican or Democrat, but a deep state bureaucracy. Hillary Clinton, Barack Hussein Obama, Joseph R. Biden Jr., of course, all of their comrades. Gosh, you could almost hear the Soviet national anthem playing behind them when they were in the Oval Office plotting their spying on President Trump when he was running for office, when he came down that golden escalator. Because for them, they don't want the average citizen. Not that by any means Donald Trump is average, he's extraordinary, but they did not want the private citizen to become president of the United States, to unveil that curtain and show you, the American people, what was happening. Remember that first inaugural address. I give it back to you, the American people. And behind him, all of those nasty globalists, especially George W. Bush, who could not put his parka on. He said, oh no, all the rain is hitting my face, because that rain represents truth and transparency. And Donald Trump is that tornado. The thunder and lightning has come back to the deep state, and this federal government once again working for you, the American people, in roughly 70 plus days. So I'm excited for this hearing. I was fired up yesterday for the JFK hearing on all of those big secrets that our government's been hiding from us. This is just the beginning, folks. Imagine what will happen between now and between the end of President Trump's term, which will make me very sad come January 20th, 2029. But we're going to learn a lot. And today, what a special way to celebrate it, because not only is it Transparency Central, but you have, once again, Liberation Day, with the reciprocal tariffs being put fully into place and millions of dollars saved already by this White House, by DOJ, exposing so much of the waste, fraud, and corruption, and so much of the globalist agenda. I can remember even my family members, especially my late grandmother, my late uncle, they would have loved to see President Donald Trump in action. It's what they talked about for years. Why is our government allowing other people to beat us, to win out? It doesn't make any sense. And my grandmother would talk about, she was almost 100 years young when she passed, living from 1915 to 2014. Think about that span of the advancement in technology, living through two world wars and crazy global conflicts, the 20th century, the bloodiest in the history of mankind. But with that hope and optimism going into the future, but that post-World War II world where a new agenda came about, perhaps a new world order, a deep state, a globalist mentality, which was serving itself and not the American people, which signed trade deals like NAFTA that harmed the American worker, that put places like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania out of business, or even Peoria, Illinois, that sat on the river, once beacons of American manufacturing and production. Well, all of that really comes to a halt today, and we spur once again what the Midwest dominated at. There was steel production, there was manufacturing, the sawmills, things that made America great through the middle class, those broad shoulders that built this great nation, including my ancestors. So it's a proud day. April 2nd, 2025, a day to remember, Reciprocal Tariff Day, Liberation Day, as President Trump is putting it, an exciting time to be in this new golden era. Thank you to our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. Are you a yo-yo dieter? I've done this on a couple of occasions, and let me tell you, it's just not healthy, because it's spiking your sugar levels, blood levels. It leads to heart attack, stroke, type 2 diabetes as well, and just flat out dangerous. So TakeLean.com has this wonderful supplement that trims fat like Doge trims that waste. So maybe Elon Musk would be trying this as well. We'd love to have him on the show to talk about it, but freedom from extra weight starts today, and I want to get you started with this amazing deal. 20% off when you type in code RSBN. That is TakeLean.com, TakeLean.com, 20% off. The science behind lean is simple and very impressive. The studied ingredients helps target weight loss. It maintains those cravings, controls appetite and cravings, blood sugars as well, helps burn fat by converting that into good and steady energy. So lower your risk of heart attack, type 2 diabetes, and stroke, and stop the yo-yo dieting. Do the healthy stuff. Go for those walks every day, at least 1 mile. Do what Patrick Morrisey, the great governor of West Virginia, is doing with his personal trainer, Bobby Kennedy Jr. Get on that carnivore diet, get moving, go to the gym, but also TakeLean.com. This is a supplement. It's not an injection. It's not big pharma. It's not one of those fads. This will help you to streamline everything in your weight loss journey. Freedom from extra weight starts today. TakeLean.com, code RSBN, 20% off your first order. Thank you for sponsoring us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. We are awaiting the House GOP hearing inside Otto Penn's FBI, and that was a scary time as we know what happened with Crossfire Hurricane, those documents being released by President Trump last week by executive order. And we are going through those here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. Hope other journalists and colleagues around the country, around the world, looking at that as well. As President Trump said, here you go. Here's all of it. So he was meeting with his U.S. ambassadors. Here is the release of these documents. And meanwhile, you have Cory Booker on the Senate floor, not even trying to block legislation, but just talking about God knows what for hours and hours. I need to double check that. He might have beat Strom Thurmond's record for the filibuster. Of course, that was at 24 hours and 18 minutes, and it really was despicable because it was fighting civil rights legislation, the Civil Rights Act. But Cory Booker stood there going on 23 or so hours simply just to hear himself talk. And then you had Democrats on both sides, both chambers of Congress yesterday, screaming about Medicare and Medicaid, but with no substance. And then they just look like they don't know what to do. And it's because they are on the 20% or less side of 80-20 issues. They're advocating for crazy things like men and women's sports. Common sense that brought people who are not political. I think about Danica Patrick, the great race driver, or even Sage Steele, everything that happened to her in her career. You know, she succumbed to doing what her company asked of her. And then she had a slight political opinion, more of a cultural opinion. It wasn't a big deal. And she was off of company time talking to Jay Cutler of everybody. And I remember Jay Cutler back in his day. It's shocking. I mean, everyone has a podcast, I guess, because this guy was the worst quarterback for the Chicago Bears. But I digress when it comes to fall football season. She lost her job because she shared an opinion on Barack Hussein Obama. Doesn't make a lot of sense, because if you remember that same network going back to COVID, they were able to share all different kinds of crazy woke political opinions, and they were a sportscast. It's really amazing to me what's happened in the last few years, but we are getting back on the right side of history. We're having a revival in this country, whether it be in the American church, whether it be in our form of constitutional government. Republicanism, not the party, our form of government, that everyone is equal under the law, and more people leaving the woke agenda and becoming awake. I think this was very clear yesterday in the hearing with Chairwoman Anna Paulina Luna of the Sunshine State of Florida, being the transparency hawk that she is. And let me tell you, I had the privilege of working with her at Turning Point USA. This is someone who is fierce. As President Trump says, don't let her look give you the idea that she's not tough, because she is. She's a sweet person, wonderful, considerate, just an absolute gentle lady, but she's tough as nails, just like many of the great women in his cabinet and behind this MAGA populist movement. And Mark Cuban, eat your heart out. You're always welcome to the big populist tent. Remember when you said that on the campaign trail, President Trump does not have smart women surrounding him. Nothing could be further from the truth. They are some of the best out there. They are the kind of women that helped shape this great nation. People like Betsy Ross, who etched a wonderful, immortal flag, quite frankly. I hope you have one of those, the 13 stripes, and of course, the beautiful circle of stars to highlight our very first flag. Could you imagine being alive back then to this new nation born out of the most powerful empire in the world, the British Empire? And we said, enough is enough. No taxation without representation. And how in so many ways we're fighting similar battles nearly 250 years later. But as President Ronald Reagan said, the closest thing to eternal life on earth is a government program. And this president, President Donald Trump, really being the full circle of President Reagan's tenure, getting it started to eliminate the Department of Education, to truly bring back that 10th Amendment, states' rights. The states know how to run things better at times than the federal government. So he's sending it back. He's sending it to the locals. He's sending it to the states to decide what's best for their education policies, so that you don't have things like No Child Left Behind that ironically left so many children behind. And if you look at the last quarter century and the name of legislation, whether it be the Patriot Act that created more and more surveillance for you and your loved ones, or you have something like, again, No Child Left Behind, which left many children behind in the educational systems in America. this president committed to being the people's president and truly the Federalist president. And what do I mean by that? Bringing power back to the states, listening to the laws on the books, following law and order. And that's what we need here in this great country today, because even someone like Alexander Hamilton, the late, great, famous individual, you might have seen the musical, but this gentleman wanted a really strong, centralized Washington, D.C. Even what's happened in the last half century or so, I think he would be rolling in his grave watching how powerful the bureaucrats have become. But time's up. You have people like President Trump and patriots like Elon Musk committed to streamlining the size and scope of this bloated government. And thank God for that. We have a hearing inside the Biden Autopen FBI, a House GOP hearing with Chairman there, Mr. Van Drew. Let's tune in now as they pledge allegiance to our American flag.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll stay standing for a moment. I will now recognize myself for an opening statement. First of all, I want to welcome everyone to the second hearing of the Subcommittee on Oversight. Today, we are continuing the important work we began in our first hearing, exposing the weaponization and politicizing of federal law enforcement agency against the American public. This time, we'll be focusing squarely on the Federal Bureau of Investigation under the Biden administration. A bureau bloated by bureaucracy, a bureau that burned through billions, not millions, but billions of dollars in taxpayers' dollars to chase political enemies, a bureau that silenced dissent and trampled on our constitutional rights. All while real threats to our safety were ignored. This wasn't just a leadership failure, it was a betrayal of the American people and of the American trust. This hearing is more than oversight. This is about restoring trust. This is about standing up for every American who believes that government should protect them, not target them. Let me be clear. The FBI should be a shield for the American people. Instead, under the Biden-Harris administration, it became a sword to use against them. Let's start with parents who spoke up for their kids, parents who voiced concerns about radical school agendas. What did they get in return? A surveillance file, a federal investigation for just trying to be a good parent. That's not law enforcement. In my book, and in most Americans' books, that's intimidation. Let's talk about people of faith. The Biden FBI branded certain Catholic Americans as, quote, radical traditionalists and potential domestic terrorists. They even discussed infiltrating churches by having parishioners spy on their own people, by their own fellow parishioners. And it wasn't just Catholic churches. In 2021, the FBI raided a Hindu temple in the state of New Jersey. Using overwhelming force, agents stormed sacred grounds. And listen to this. They held guns to the faces of the holy men. They disrupted religious life, all based on loose, untrue allegations, which are now thankfully unraveling in court. Our sacred places, our churches, our synagogues, our temples, our mosques, they should be sanctuaries, not scenes of government surveillance. Let's talk about free speech. The FBI knew Hunter Biden's laptop was real. They knew it. They colluded with big tech to frame it as Russian disinformation. They tried to bury the story from the American people. That wasn't law enforcement. That was raw political election interference. And all of this, the worst part of all, it wasn't free. It came with a price tag. In fiscal year 2024, and listen to this, the FBI spent over $6 billion, not million, billion dollars on intelligence, counterintelligence, and counterterrorism, all on American soil, more than half of its entire budget. But instead of using those billions to fight violent crime or keep our communities safe, the money was funneled into politically driven investigations and abuses of power. The waste did not stop there. $220,000 paid to Igor Danchenko, a key source behind the discredited Steele dossier, plus another $300,000 to that planned before the FBI can finally close him as a source. Up to $1 million offered to Christopher Steele to try and corroborate, which he couldn't do, his own baseless claims. $200 million more secured for a new FBI headquarters, a reward in Greenbelt, Maryland, despite widespread public distrust and concern and strong opposition from the Judiciary Committee. And that is only scratching the surface. The FBI couldn't give us enough real numbers, and we're going to continue to pursue that and just find out how much this really cost us. For 4 long years under the Biden administration, Americans had to suffer through this. Groceries got more expensive, rent kept rising, families struggled to make ends meet, some working 2 or even 3 jobs just to stay afloat. And while they were scraping by, Americans working hard, trying to survive, the federal government was using their hard-earned tax dollars not to help them, not to protect them, not to make things better, but to surveil them and fund political hit jobs. People, and I'll use the vernacular, they're pissed off. They're tired. They're tired of it, and they have every right to be. They want the FBI focused on real threats, the southern border, cyber attacks, violent crimes in our neighborhoods and our cities, foreign adversaries that are hacking our elections, not on chasing down somebody you don't agree with, not on chasing down a political opponent. All of this pointed to a clear conclusion. The Biden FBI picks and chooses its priorities based on politics, not on public safety. And ladies and gentlemen, that is wrong. And if it weren't enough, whistleblowers tell us about a corrupt bonus structure, just to make it even worse. Bonuses for opening more cases, bonuses for inflating the numbers, bonuses for manipulating timesheets. Imagine being rewarded not for catching criminals, but for cooking the books. You couldn't make it up. But it's true. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's not a Republican talking point. It's not a political talking point. This isn't speculation. This is documented, well-documented abuse, verified by brave whistleblowers and confirmed by this Judiciary Committee. Some may say, and good question, well, what are you doing about it? I'm going to tell you. We're working to fundamentally reform the FBI from the ground up. We are drafting legislation to rein in abuse, cut waste, and refocus the Bureau on real threats to public safety. We're investigating every single dollar spent and every abuse of power uncovered. We are demanding accountability from those responsible and pressing for transparency at every single level. And yes, we are exposing the truth. Because as they say, the truth shall set you free. The first step to real change is making sure the American people know exactly what's going on, what was done to them with their own money. That's the cruel part of it. By their own government, the cruelest part of it. Director Kash Patel is leading a new FBI, one that returns to its roots, one that Americans can be proud of. He moved agents out of Washington, D.C., back into communities, back to fighting violent crimes as they should be. Attorney General Pam Bondi took swift and decisive action to dismantle the most politicized units within the Department of Justice. She redirected resources towards real law enforcement priorities, scaled back abusive practices, and made clear the DOJ's mission is to uphold the law, not to serve any political agenda. any political agenda. And you know, it's the old saying, if it happened to us, it can happen to you. This isn't Republican, this isn't Democrat, this is just doing the right thing. Together, they are rebuilding the Bureau from the ground up. They're doing it the right way, with transparency, with accountability, and with a focus on the Constitution of the United States of America. This is the FBI that the American people deserve. So today, we're going to hear from those who know the truth, former agents, former insiders, people who saw firsthand what went wrong and what we can do to fix it. Because, you know, this isn't just about the past. It's about a better future. It's about restoring our faith in American institutions. It's about protecting our freedoms. It's about demanding that taxpayer dollars go to protecting Americans, not targeting them. The only way that we will understand where we are and where we want to go is by understanding where we were. It's about doing the right thing. I thank you, and I look forward to this testimony. I now will recognize the ranking member, Ms. Crockett, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and as I'm sure you can assume, we see this a little bit differently. Here we go again, talking about Biden, and more Biden. Today is nothing more than a dog and pony show for Republicans to avoid facing the American people for their trash policies that are killing the economy and our democracy. Despite Republicans' claim of backing the blue and being the party of law and order, we're here today because Republicans are willing to throw our country's top law enforcement agents under the bus to appease Trump and execute his political vengeance. Now, I know remembering things is hard for some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, like remembering not to add reporters into a Signal chat discussing military war plans. But let me remind my colleagues that it was Trump who decided to store national secrets and classified documents next to his oversized bathtub and toilet at Mar-a-Lago. It was Trump who took the documents out of the boxes and shared them with his guests. It was Trump who told his staff to move the boxes when the FBI was coming. And it was Trump who appointed Director Christopher Wray as head of the FBI, the same director that allowed the investigation to move forward. As much as Trump and Republicans hate to accept it, we are still a country with laws. And when you break them, there are consequences. Now, make no mistake, we should all be concerned about the FBI. But my concerns as ranking member of this subcommittee, as a member of Congress, and as an attorney, as well as a citizen, are based on things called facts. And when I say facts, I mean clear, indisputable facts, not those alternative facts my Republican colleagues continue pushing onto the American people. So let's talk about facts. Fact. Even prior to being confirmed by the Senate, Kash Patel was directing officials within the FBI to fire members within the Bureau simply because they worked on the lawful investigations into Trump. Fact, Patel failed to disclose his previous work and financial ties with the country of Qatar, a country that, had you had read the Mazars report, released last year by the House Oversight Committee, you would know paid close to $500,000 to Trump while he was president of the United States. Unsurprisingly, the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force was recently disbanded, and the DOJ also cut back on its Foreign Agents Registration Act enforcement. Our enemies are jumping up and down now that we're doing their work for them. Another fact, Patel has never even been an FBI agent and is now leading the Bureau. Even one of today's Republican witnesses organizations, the Bureau, has advocated having an FBI agent lead the Bureau. But rather than confirm a director with credible, dedicated experience, the Republicans confirmed a political loyalist with no Quantico or FBI training. Talk about DEI. Didn't earn it higher. Another fact, Patel, who rails against telework, what he calls lazy agents, was working part-time in and out of Las Vegas, commuting back and forth between there and DC, while also living in the home of a GOP mega donor. Think about that for a second. Could you imagine what Republicans would have done had, say, James Comey had been living in New York part-time as the FBI director, and if his New York home was owned by, say, George Soros? Speaker Johnson would have forced a floor vote on articles of impeachment within days of this news coming out. But nevertheless, my Republican colleagues are willing to sacrifice safety for stupidity as long as it's loyal. Another fact, Patel and Trump-backed FBI leadership have redirected FBI agents who are working on investigations involving violent crimes against children and child exploitation and transferred them to work on anti-Tesla attacks and redacting Jeffrey Epstein files. Talk about FBI waste and abuse. You simply can't make this stuff up. To be clear, Director Wray testified before Congress last year, noting that, quote, if each one of the FBI's cyber agents and intelligence analysts focus exclusively on the China threat, China's hackers would still outnumber FBI cyber personnel by at least 50-1. Yet rather than hire more agents to protect against these cybersecurity threats, Director Patel is reassigning agents to redact Epstein files. Someone please tell me how this makes America safe. It's almost as ridiculous and wasteful as Patel's idea to contract the Bureau with UFC fighters. And while I have very real concerns about the current state of the FBI today, I want to be very clear. My concerns aren't with career agents, the men and women dedicating their lives to protect our country and communities. It's with the irresponsible leadership and reckless decisions coming from Patel, Trump, and Doge staff within the FBI. Our Bureau needs resources to do its job effectively. What it doesn't need is 20-something-year-old Doge bags reviewing materials without having undergone proper vetting and clearance. The American people have a right to be worried, but these worries shouldn't be based on Republican baseless conspiracy theories. Our country is already on a dangerous path, pushing closer to causing irreparable harm. Republican members need to wake up and put Trump loyalties aside to engage in real oversight of the current FBI before it's too late. Congress deserves it. The brave men and women at the Bureau deserve it, and the American people deserve it. I want to add one more point. As a civil rights attorney, I have had to sue law enforcement. There have been times that I can truly say that law enforcement has crossed the line. And I truly believe that there can be one or two in a bunch that can ruin everyone. The problem that I have right now, though, is that we have decided to focus in on something that my Republican colleagues have decided to term as being political. What is political is when somebody says that they are going to come back and seek retribution. What is political is firing people because they simply were following the evidence and doing their jobs as law enforcement has been trained to do. And ultimately, regardless of whether or not anyone believes that it was right to indict the president, not once, not twice, not three, but 4 times, he was indicted. Ultimately, each of you knows enough to know that at the end of the day, it is citizens that sit on a grand jury that are the ones that decide whether or not evidence exists to go forward with an indictment. And ultimately, when this president was convicted by a jury on the state level, it was a jury of his peers. And so I want to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your commitment. And thank you so much for the testimony that you will provide. With that, I will yield back.
I'm now going to recognize the chairman of the full committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The previous speaker talked about facts. Here's one fact I know. It's night and day dealing with the Bondi Patel Justice Department versus the Garland Ray Justice Department. Under the Pam Bondi as Attorney General, the Foreign Influence Task Force That group that was responsible for censoring Americans has been disbanded. The school board's memorandum has been rescinded. We sent 7 subpoenas to Kash Patel 5 weeks ago. The response we've gotten is unbelievable compared to what we got under the previous Justice Department. He's actually given us thousands of documents already, new information that we tried to get from Director Wray that he wouldn't give us, we've already received. We'll be talking about some of that. So that is the fact, complete change from where we were with the previous Justice Department. The previous Justice Department, of course, that couldn't tell us who planted the pipe bombs, who leaked the Dobbs opinion, who put cocaine at the White House, couldn't tell us answers to those questions. But they had plenty of time to put together the memo to say we're going to investigate moms and dads in a school board meeting, as the chairman pointed out. They put together a memorandum. We've now learned it wasn't just in the Richmond field office, but in other field offices where they were equating pro-life Catholics to extremists. We know they raided the president's home. We know they retaliated against whistleblowers. They even put together, the previous speaker talked about politics. Politics, the FBI created a questionnaire where they asked their employees about other employees who were maybe giving information to us as whistleblowers. Did that person support Trump? That is as political as you can get. So the real thing here is it's literally night and day, the difference between the kind of information that we're able to receive, the help that we're getting, and the focus on going after traditional bad guys, not having half your agents and half your budgets focused on surveilling the American people. Let's go get the traditional bad guys. That's what Kash Patel is doing at the FBI, getting the FBI back to the mission they've had before, which I know some of our witnesses who served there are going to talk about. So I thank the chairman for putting this together, and I thank our witnesses for being here, and I yield back.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Raskin.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and thanks to Ms. Crockett for calling us together. We are already 10 weeks into the Trump administration, and still the Republicans are recycling the most tiresome, vacuous, and debunked stories, conspiracy theories about the Biden administration, while demurely declining to conduct any oversight at all of the current administration. And I agree with the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Jordan. It is day and night, but I think he's seeing day and night backwards. Donald Trump is turning our country into a gangster state where agencies like the Federal Trade Commission, the FBI, and the Department of Justice act as presidential enforcers, conducting political deals with elected officials like New York City Mayor Adams, corporate shakedowns against ABC, CBS, and other media entities, and law firms like Paul Weiss, Rifkin, WilmerHale, and Jenner and Block, demanding pledges of loyalty from citizens, and in some cases, demanding cold, hard cash in lawsuits brought directly by the president against private businesses. Meanwhile, they're offering mass pardons, immunity, and protection to violent insurrectionists, convicted drug beaters, cop beaters, drug traffickers, corrupt politicians, as long as they're willing to kiss the ring and do the president's bidding. Let's look at how this administration is treating the honest men and women of the FBI. In his first days in office, Trump targeted thousands of FBI agents simply for doing their jobs after the mob violence of January 6, 2021, and holding the cop beaters and insurrectionist rioters accountable. FBI agents had to sue to stop this purge and block them from publicly releasing their names to the violent militias like Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, whom President Trump had already given pardons to. And those pardons, by the way, this Department of Justice are extending to other crimes these people have committed, including cocaine trafficking and gun charges. This administration isn't opposing corruption. It's opening the door wide open to corruption every single day for his friends. Donald Trump ordered the FBI to stop conducting background investigations of top White House officials. Why? He disbanded the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force, charged with identifying and combating malign foreign influence operations targeting the United States. Why? He suspended enforcement of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and reduced enforcement of the Foreign Agents Registration Act just 2 days after it was reported that Director Kash Patel had engaged in lucrative consulting work for Qatar and for a Vladimir Putin-connected foreign arms conglomerate. The current FBI leadership is diverting the FBI's resources away from public safety and national security and towards MAGA conspiracy fixations and obsessions. According to press reports, hundreds of agents ordinarily assigned to defending the national security of the United States have been pulled into a mind-boggling effort where they were pulling all-nighters and working around the clock to review the Epstein files after Attorney General Bondi botched the first attempt at what she said was going to be a complete release of the Epstein files. So it's important to consider what the FBI is not investigating in the frenzy of all these Back to the Future wild goose chases. They're not investigating Signalgate, the extraordinary decision by a group of America's highest national security officials, including one who was in Moscow at the Kremlin at the time, to compromise the safety of our service members and intelligence officers by using Signal, a non-secure commercial application to reveal specific confidential and classified details about an impending military airstrike, complete with timestamps for when F-18 aircraft would launch and arrive at their targets and when Tomahawk missiles would be fired at buildings controlled by Houthi members. What are DOJ and FBI doing to investigate this stunning, dangerous episode of incompetence or recklessness, at the very least, that undoubtedly violates all kinds of federal, criminal, and civil laws? Nothing. In fact, when asked about the Signal chat, Attorney General Bondi changed the subject to Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. Sound familiar? That's what we're doing today. Just a week after the story broke about this tremendous security breach, she said, case closed. No further investigation, no lessons learned, no hearings. That's the end. Can you imagine what they would be doing if that had happened under President Biden? If his top national security team had been talking about a military strike on Signal, there would be 8 special committees and subcommittees investigation, and they'd all be demanding impeachment, the way they're demanding impeachment of judges who blow the whistle on the illegalities of this administration. Well, what else is the FBI not investigating? Elon Musk, his startling ties to the Communist Party of China, the CCP. Musk is bulldozing our federal government while accessing the people's most sensitive databases. And he's traveled to China multiple times in the last several years and met with the highest level Communist Party officials. He's continued to open factories in China where he does half of his business, even as he works as a, quote, special government employee to dismantle and destroy our federal government. Can you imagine if President Biden had done that, what our colleagues would be saying? Well, look, in this new state that we're in, the FBI is not here to enforce the law. It exists to allow the president to shake down businesses and individuals, offering them protection and immunity if they comply and persecution if they don't. The administration installed as the head of the FBI Kash Patel, known for being the man who will do anything for Trump. They also installed as deputy director Dan Bongino, a far-right podcaster and conspiracy theorist who boasted in 2018 that his entire life right now is about owning the libs. His appointment was a particular betrayal of Patel's promise that he would appoint a deputy director who would be an onboard active special agent, as has been the case for 117 years. Already stories of intimidation and pressure in this DOJ and this FBI are trickling out. 7 veteran prosecutors were forced to resign rather than take part in a corrupt bargain to dismiss charges that were brought by a grand jury in New York against the mayor of New York, Eric Adams. The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District, Daniel Sassoon, who clerked on the Supreme Court for Justice Scalia and was active in the Federalist Society, resigned, saying nothing had changed in the facts of the case, nothing had changed in the law of the case, nothing had changed in the evidence. It was simply this political deal that Donald Trump had cooked up with the mayor of New York, who traveled down to Mar-a-Lago. The longtime criminal chief in the DC U.S. Attorney's Office was forced to resign rather than open the current bogus investigation into Biden-era clean energy projects. So what we see at the Trump FBI and DOJ is part of a broad pattern. They're targeting lawyers who took up causes or clients that Donald Trump doesn't like, and they've issued illegal executive orders intended as threats against them. The president and his friends are threatening federal judges that ruled against them to halt their blatantly illegal executive actions, calling for impeachment of the judges. And there have been threats against their families made online. The president and his friends are threatening journalists and deporting legal immigrants for exercising their First Amendment rights, sending a clear message to anyone thinking of speaking up against the administration. The FBI's leadership are threatening to take the FBI down a very dangerous path today, one that's entirely incompatible with the values of the men and women of the FBI and the best traditions of the agency. Once again, with today's hearing, my colleagues are turning a blind eye to what's going on right now, choosing instead to regurgitate and recycle debunked and discredited lies about the Biden administration and somebody having an investigation into parents and school board that's been debunked a million times. That was an investigation into people making violent death threats against school board members. Nobody was ever arrested. Nobody was ever charged with anything. And yet they've been dining out on that. I think it's for 5 years now, talking about something that led nowhere, and there was nothing wrong with it in the first place. So the men and women of the FBI deserve to know that Congress is watching, and we've got your back. We're not going to stand idly by while this administration tries to turn the FBI into an arm of a pay-to-play gangster state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. Real quick, the gentleman said that these aren't facts, they're debunked theories. They are facts, and we have it on video. We have the Attorney General apologizing for what happened and what they did. We have the director of the FBI finally having to apologize for what they did. We have Mark Zuckerberg apologizing for what was done, and that's only scratching the surface. I can't go into all of it. I will now, without objection, all the other opening statements will be included in the record, and I'm going to talk about the smart people that we have here to testify. Mr. Stuart Whitson. Mr. Whitson is the Senior Director of the Federal Affairs at the Foundation for Government Accountability. Prior to joining the FGA, he served with the FBI, including as Supervisory Special Agent in the Directorate of Intelligence. Mr. Richard Stout. Mr. Stout is the Director of Reform, the Bureau, an organization comprised of former FBI special agents that advocate for returning the Bureau to its core mission. He served with the FBI for more than 2 decades, working on cases involving drug trafficking, terrorism, financial crimes, and other matters. Ms. Nicole Parker. Ms. Parker is a former FBI special agent, having spent more than 10 years with the Bureau. She specialized in cases involving securities fraud before being transferred to a team focused on violent crime, where she focused on cases involving murder for hire, murder in general, sexual assault, and human trafficking. Dr. Luke Hunt. Dr. Hunt is Associate Professor of the University of Alabama, where he is a member of the philosophy faculty. He previously served as an FBI agent for 6 years. We will begin by swearing you all in. Would you please rise and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief? So help you God. Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Please be seated. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony in 5 minutes. Mr. Whitson, you may begin.
Chairman Van Drew, Ranking Member Crockett, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Elections have consequences. And in just 4 years, the Biden administration managed to politicize and weaponize the FBI in ways never seen, whether targeting then-candidate Trump, parents at school board meetings, or Catholics doing nothing more than practicing their faith. The Biden administration hijacked the FBI to promote the left's political objectives. But it gets worse. While the full investigative resources of the FBI focused on the January 6 protesters and other perceived political enemies, the Biden administration manufactured the worst border crisis in our nation's history, allowing criminals, terrorists, and drugs to flood into our country at unimaginable levels. The result was predictable: an explosion of human trafficking, violent crime, and drug-related deaths. And with more than 2 million known gotaways on Biden's watch, the threat of a terrorist attack on the homeland is greater than it's ever been. But there's another big problem. Not only did the Biden administration's actions undermine public safety, but they also caused a majority of Americans to lose trust in the FBI. And this loss of trust is a crisis, not only for the FBI, but for the country. But there's good news. Again, elections have consequences. And with President Trump back in office, the FBI now has a new director working aggressively to right the ship. But it's not going to happen overnight, and regaining the trust of Americans is going to require significant and sweeping changes. And here's 7 such changes. First, clean house. With new leadership poised to get the FBI back on track, one big hurdle stands in the way: entrenched bureaucrats. We've already seen this play out in dramatic fashion with the now former FBI leader in New York who tried to coerce his subordinates to, quote, dig in against the administration. This was a clear act of insubordination that deeply embarrassed the FBI and only further undermined public trust. And there are surely other FBI employees still entrenched in the Bureau that will resist meaningful change in less obvious but equally harmful ways. Look, it's simple. While the vast majority of FBI employees are incredible, hardworking people who will faithfully execute their duties, the few who undermine the new leadership cannot be allowed to do so. And those who have engaged in past behavior warranting dismissal or who refuse to come to work when ordered to do so must be fired, period. Number 2, drain the swamp. Director Patel should drastically reduce the size of the FBI headquarters, keeping a small footprint in D.C. to promote accountability while shifting more staff and resources to the field offices and other locations outside the Beltway. Relocating the FBI outside of D.C. would save money and reduce political influence by allowing the FGI to hire professional staff from outside the D.C. bubble. Number 3, moving the bulk of FBI headquarters out of D.C. will present a natural opportunity to consolidate and reorganize existing units that perform duplicative or outdated missions. Director Patel should seize this opportunity to promote efficiency and save taxpayer dollars. Number 4, get DEI out of the FBI. Under former Director Comey, the FBI moved away from merit-based hiring and instead toward race-based hiring. Moving forward, Director Patel should ensure that all hiring decisions are based purely on merit and talent. Number 5, the FBI should be refocused back to a law enforcement agency that uses intelligence to advance its law enforcement mission, rather than an intelligence agency that also engages in law enforcement. Patel could start by eliminating the intelligence branch and merging its personnel and mission into the FBI's other operational units. Intelligence in the FBI should be a tool to advance investigations, not its own standalone department. Number 6, we need more oversight and accountability within the FBI. But to earn back the trust of the American people, Congress must get involved. Besides conducting your own oversight, Congress should also consider creating new criminal penalties for FBI employees who knowingly abuse the FBI's investigative powers. And finally, to get the FBI back on track, Director Patel should execute his own DOGE effort to identify waste, fraud, and abuse within the FBI. At the end of the day, America deserves and needs a world-class law enforcement agency it can trust. With the current leadership in place, the FBI is well on its way to becoming that agency once again, because after all, elections have consequences. With that, I thank you for the opportunity to testify in today's hearing, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Whitson. Mr. Stout, you may begin.
Good morning, Chairman Van Drew, Ranking Member Crockett, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. It is an honor to share my perspective drawn from nearly 4 decades of public service in law enforcement, national security, and counterintelligence. My name is Richard Stout. I'm a 35-year veteran of law enforcement and currently serve as Director of Reform the Bureau, a nationwide group of former and retired FBI special agents committed to restoring the FBI to its core mission, protecting the public, fighting crime, and upholding the rule of law. I took on this position with Reform the Bureau as a private citizen because I was frustrated and disheartened to see the FBI, the world's most renowned and iconic law enforcement agency, fall into such disarray over the past few years. When I was 19 years old, I became a deputy sheriff while attending college in Southwest Virginia. Driven by a strong sense of duty and commitment to community safety, I went on to become a Virginia State Trooper and later State Police Special Agent. These are early roles grounded me in the foundational principles of public trust, discipline, and ethical responsibility. In 1997, I joined the FBI as a special agent and was assigned to the Miami field office. There, I was assigned to a Colombian drug trafficking squad where I initiated multi-jurisdictional complex investigations and was responsible for overseeing federal wiretap operations known as Title III's targeting significant DTOs. Following 9/11, I became part of a specialized team tasked with tracking the hijackers' movements before their attack. Our work proved critical in tracing connections and providing timely intelligence to our federal and military partners supporting the broader counterterrorism effort in the aftermath of the attacks. Throughout my tenure with the FBI, I served as a case agent in several high-impact criminal investigations. Notably, I led the public corruption investigation into the Scott Rothstein Ponzi scheme, then the third largest of its kind in U.S. history. In 2005, I was deployed to Haiti as part of a team of FBI SWAT and hostage negotiators to assist in the rescue of a kidnapped 9-year-old American girl. She had been abducted from her home and was found in a remote mountainside shack being held for ransom. This operation demonstrated the Bureau's global reach and our unwavering commitment to safeguarding American lives abroad. Between 2017 and 2018, I responded to 2 active shooter events. The first was the attack at Fort Lauderdale International Airport, where I assisted Special Agent Nicole Parker in gathering evidence. The second was far more personal. My daughter was a student at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, and was inside one of the classrooms hardest hit during the shooting. The memory of that tragedy has deeply influenced my perspective on public safety, the importance of preparedness, and the deep concern I carry over the FBI's failure to act on 2 prior reports regarding the shooter's intent. In 2018, I was part of a small team that apprehended Cesar Sayoc, who targeted high-profile Democrats and media figures with mail bombs. Internationally, I represented the FBI in coordinating with foreign partners on reintegrating deportees formerly radicalized by extremist groups. I've lectured at the International Law Enforcement Academies in Hungary and Botswana, and proudly graduated from the FBI National Academy Session 272. Since retiring, I've continued to serve the public through Reform the Bureau. We at Reform the Bureau support Director Patel, AG Bondi, President Trump, and their reform-minded approach to the FBI. Our intent is to not harm the Bureau, but to restore it. The stories and data we've brought forward represent deeply ingrained issues, repeatedly experienced by dedicated professionals. Our goal is not retribution, but responsibility. We must rebuild the Bureau's integrity and reorient to serve the American people, not internal politics. One of the areas we've been most focused on is Bureau decentralization, getting more resources and agents out of Washington and back into the field. The Director has been vocal in his support for this approach. We applaud his efforts. Another area is proper resource allocation. We at Reform the Bureau believe the criminal investigations have been deprioritized over the past few years in favor of those more political in nature. That must end, and we trust the Director will properly allocate the resources needed to pursue, capture, and deter criminals who wish us harm. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, our nation is at a crossroads in how we approach law enforcement, national security, and the trust placed in our federal institutions. I look forward to contributing to this important discussion and happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stout. Ms. Parker, you may begin.
Chairman Van Drew, Ranking Member Crockett, and members of the subcommittee, I would like to thank you for inviting me to come and respectfully speak with you today. It was my privilege and honor to serve America as an FBI special agent for over a dozen years under 3 administrations. While extremely demanding, my pursuit of justice for all never once gave me reason for pause until I witnessed social, cultural, and political agendas enter the FBI mission to the point it impacted our ability to effectively do the job the public and our responsibilities demand. During my career, I observed an organizational change that I labeled the emergence of 2 FBIs. FBI 1 understands the Constitution and honors its oath to uphold and defend it. It is indifferent to partisanship, places the public's interests first, and aggressively seeks out the truth. FBI 1 keeps its head down, stays under the radar, works tirelessly, and produces outcomes all Americans can be proud of. On the other hand, FBI 2 is the antithesis of FBI 1 and serves at the convenience of itself and is willing to use their law enforcement power to push their own personal, political, and social agendas without consideration to its oath of office. Under the Biden administration's Justice Department, it became increasingly difficult for special agents to do their jobs as Americans lost trust and confidence in the FBI. In a June 2023 NBC News poll, only 37% of registered voters surveyed said they had a positive view of the FBI. Lady Justice was no longer blind. It seemed that equal protection and justice under the law might not mean the equal application of law. DOJ and FBI too targeted President Trump's 2024 campaign and the January 6 subjects in a way that I had never witnessed before. And I say that as someone who investigated the most violent and dangerous offenders in South Florida. They treated Trump in particular as if he were at the top of the FBI's most wanted list. Love him or hate him, it is entirely irrelevant. FBI too abused its discretion and authority in both cases, while other judicial remedies remained reasonably available and dismissed legitimate concerns raised by FBI 1. Yet the FBI seemed to turn a blind eye to crimes committed by those on the opposite end of the political spectrum. On February 2nd of 2021, FBI Miami Special Agent Laura Schwarzenberger and Daniel Alphen were shot and killed in the line of duty while executing a search warrant on a child predator. It is disturbing to me that during the same time frame, we regularly heard of FBI SWAT resources liberally being dispatched for the arrest of first-time, nonviolent January 6 offenders. The widespread use of SWAT appeared to be for political intimidation. Yet in contrast, there was no SWAT presence when FBI agents Schwarzenberger and Alphen were murdered. Child predators are known to be the most dangerous and violent offenders. If SWAT had been there that morning, they would still be alive. And to add to the pain of their deaths, the FBI did not even pick up the tab for their memorial services. A private donor was asked by the FBI if they'd be willing to pay for them, since the FBI did not have the funds to do so. Yet the FBI was spending exorbitant amounts of money on non-mission-based projects, such as moving to electrical vehicles, January 6 investigations, and diversity initiatives. The FBI became laser-focused on its Office of Diversity and Inclusion Programs. There were 19 different diversity committees, clubs, and groups. Focusing on anything other than the FBI's mission is a dangerous distraction. I've never once consoled a grieving family that requested I ensure the most diverse agent brings justice to their loved one. The Bureau must hire and promote solely based on meritocracy, and the FBI should focus on what unites us, not what divides us. It is one mission to protect all Americans and uphold the Constitution. When my colleagues were murdered in the line of duty, it was highly troubling to me that there was never an FBI-wide after-action review by Director Wray, not even an email outlining what transpired and lessons learned to mitigate risks going forward. Yet during the same time frame, FBI 2 flooded my email inbox with diversity promotions, celebrations, cultural committee activities, climate change messaging, and several requests to go to Washington, D.C. for temporary duty assignments for January 6 investigations. Unconscionable. I left the FBI close to 2 years after their deaths, and still radio silence from leadership regarding what transpired that horrific morning. Further, the DOJ changed its deadly force policy in July of 2022 for the first time in 18 years on the heels of the 2 FBI agents being murdered in the line of duty. Tone deaf. When agents should have been given more support and protection by the policy, many interpreted it that we were given less protection and more legal scrutiny with an additional de-escalation section. This can be fatal when decision-making is measured in fractions of a second, action versus reaction, and many believe the changes were a result of social justice pandering. The list of issues and concerns myself and others had with the FBI was growing long. No one felt that their voices mattered or that any changes were possible, as Director Wray and AG Garland believed that all was well, while many at the FBI were deeply troubled by what was transpiring. After much prayer and reflection, it was time for me to walk away. It is remarkable that several fugitives from the FBI's most wanted list have already been taken into custody since President Trump took office January 20th. I am hopeful and confident that under this new administration with AG Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel at the helm, that with time, effort, and serious reform, the FBI will regain Americans and FBI's employees' trust again, dismantling the political and social weaponization and return to its greatness. That is what our current, retired, and fallen FBI heroes' legacies deserve, and most of all, it is what Americans deserve.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Dr. Hunt, you may begin.
My goal is to briefly share my understanding of the FBI's important mission in a way that I hope is free from partisanship. I had the good fortune of serving my country as an FBI agent in a variety of settings, in a small office where I worked whatever criminal case that walked through the door, from bank robberies to crimes against children, at Washington Field Office on violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, and finally at FBI headquarters where I focused on national security policy. Now, as a professor, I draw on these experiences in teaching and research related to legal and philosophical issues in policing. But I'm not interested in the ivory tower today. One of the academic questions in my work is directly related to this committee's work. Is the FBI a liberal or illiberal institution? By liberal, I'm not referring to politics or whether you're a liberal or conservative member of Congress. I instead mean the philosophical tradition with which I assume everyone in this room agrees. The philosophical tradition, going back to John Locke, on which this country was founded. At its core, the political morality of liberalism tells us that all persons are free and equal and should be governed by the state in accordance with the rule of law. What is the alternative? Illiberal regimes govern not by the rule of law, but by arbitrary power and the official whim of state agents who are above the law. The FBI can and should be an agency that promotes the rule of law. However, I want to raise 3 concerns about the current state of affairs that could lead to the erosion of the rule of law. First, lack of predication. Predication is the basis of an investigation, the information or allegation that justifies a case. While most FBI investigations require predication, so-called assessments do not. In other words, the FBI has the discretion to investigate almost anything without any factual basis to do so. Investigation without predication is contrary to the rule of law because it may be based not on fact, but whim or arbitrary discretion. It is thus crucial for Bureau leadership to avoid any appearance of impropriety and partisanship in both actions and rhetoric. The second worry I raise is the selective enforcement of corruption. Corruption includes the use of entrusted authority for unethical benefits. This is, of course, an issue in politics, but corruption also arises in social and economic domains such as business. It should go without saying that corruption is contrary to the rule of law. It undermines institutional reputation, circumvents fair processes of economic development, and denigrates democracy and justice. Recent developments suggest that the decision to investigate corruption may be based in part on political and business expedience. Prominent cases of political corruption have been dropped suddenly for reasons unrelated to the legal merits of the case. Investigation of corruption under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act has been paused. The FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force, DOJ's kleptocracy team have been disbanded. A lack of transparency into this sort of selective enforcement of corruption could politicize the FBI, undermining the rule of law. Predication suggests a righteous investigation, regardless of whether the target is a regular citizen or a powerful politician or corporation. If we don't want to slide towards illiberalism, then no one should be above the law. Finally, I raise a concern about the selective enforcement of national security threats. We are all familiar with the horrific pattern of political and ideological mass killings in recent years. The 2015 killing of 9 black people in a Charleston church by a white supremacist hoping to spark a race war. The 2018 killing of 11 in the Pittsburgh Jewish community. The 2019 killing of 23 people in El Paso, motivated by claims of a Hispanic invasion. The 2022 killing of 10 black people in Buffalo based on a manifesto on racial purity. We should add the assassination attempt of President Trump, a very heinous act that occurred in 2024. Now listen, I have no personal information about the FBI's plan to stop politically motivated violence. On one hand, I've read reports that the disgusting vandalism and arson directed at Tesla will be prioritized as domestic terrorism. On the other hand, I've read reports that the FBI's new reorganization will move resources away from the investigation and analysis of other domestic terrorism threats. My only point is that we should not prioritize domestic terrorism investigation based on whether they're motivated by the left or the right. Investigations should be based on predication and follow the evidence, wherever it leads. That is the rule of law. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate your time, which is a precious resource in itself. I'm now going to recognize the gentleman from Alabama for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly appreciate all the witnesses being here today. First, let's make it clear we're not here to harm the FBI in any kind of way, but I think restoring credibility in the justice system within America is very, very important. One of the top issues when I was touring the district in 21 was, and that was shortly after the Biden administration, was the weaponization of government agencies against certain political opponents, certainly President Trump, certainly some of the January 6th defendants. And we've heard from Ms. Parker, that there was a mobilization to go and locate those people and arrest them when those resources could have been used elsewhere. So I guess we want to get to the general point of this hearing is how do we restore credibility in these agencies? I mean, we saw the Durham report where, in fact, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General at the time, and James Comey were sitting in the Oval Office when Clapper, the CIA director, walked in and said, hey, by the way, this Russian collusion narrative, we know that's being driven by the DNC and Hillary Clinton, and yet within a few hours, the FBI started the FISA situation and spying on General Flynn. And those kind of stories, as the reports come out after the fact, that we know now that Russian collusion was made up, and the time and resources spent on the Mueller report, and even the people in leadership in the Democratic Party driving those narratives were very dangerous for this country. And so as the American people look back and go, wow, this system does seem to be weaponized against political opponents, and that's certainly a concern. So, Mr. Whitson, I'll start with you. What steps do you think the FBI should take today to reform the agency and regain trust of the American people? What would be one of the couple of steps you think we need to look into?
Thank you for that question. I think first and foremost, the most important thing to understand is that Director Patel has two missions here. One, he has to fix the FBI, and the other, as you're alluding to, is he has to restore trust. And so to fix the FBI, you have to do a bunch of things, make sweeping changes, but to restore trust, you have to do even more. You have to go beyond actually what is necessary to fix the FBI, because that's not going to be enough to get the rest of the American population back on board. And so how does he do it? It's one word: transparency.
I was going to ask you, where does transparency come in, and how much transparency do we need at this point?
We need as much as we can get. And you heard Chairman Jordan mentioning that. You're already seeing that out of Director Patel. So it's very simple. Congress has an important oversight role. When Congress asks for documents that the law requires the FBI to provide to Congress, then the FBI needs to do that. And I think Director Patel has already shown that he gets that and that he's delivering.
Are there any other mistakes that you think Director Wray made as opposed to that Director Patel needs to avoid?
I mean, it'd be that right there. So I think Director Wray had a tendency to shield information, to drag out responses. I think towards the end of his tenure, he kind of became a little smug and kind of put out to be here to be asked questions. And I think that's the entirely wrong approach. The FBI director or whoever's designees that he sends here needs to be highly responsive to you, because you have a job to do, and they need to provide you all of the information that the law requires them to provide you right away, no delay.
And I think initially, Mr. Whitson, that transparency may be a little painful for the FBI, but I think in the long term, that's what it's going to take to restore the credibility of that agency. Mr. Stout, what do you believe the role of the FBI is?
Very simply, I think we need to eliminate the bloat. There's too many senior executive service members in roles with limited utility. They need to eliminate or demote non-essential roles and align headquarters with more field-based leadership models. So the more emphasis we put in the field will be will have a greater output, greater response to crime and anything that involves the American citizens.
Do you believe it's possible for the FBI to return to those roots?
Yes, sir, absolutely. Men and women of the FBI are some of the best people that I've ever worked with. They're honest people, they have families. They can transition well, and with enthusiasm.
Gotcha. Ms. Parker, you said in your previous testimony, over a course of the 12-plus years of service, the FBI's trajectory kind of transformed. What do you mean by that?
I joined the FBI. I was a witness to the 9/11 terrorist attacks in New York City when that occurred, and I went on to join the FBI because I wanted to give back to our country. I wanted to serve America, and when I joined the FBI, that's really what we were doing. There was very little talk about politics. You just went in, you did your job. I was originally focusing on white-collar crime. I then transferred over to violent crime. But as I mentioned, there really did become two FBIs, and the weaponization and the politicization started seeping into the agency, and it was a common topic of discussion, and you were bombarded with requests to work certain investigations, and it just became overwhelming. It was only one side of the political spectrum that was ever being held accountable. And so FBI agents were thinking, why are we doing this? We're supposed to be, Lady Justice is supposed to be blind. Lady Justice is no longer blind. And for me, I just started seeing over and over examples of politicization. And that's not what I signed up for. You know, when I witnessed the 9/11 terrorist attacks and I wanted to serve, that's not what I signed up for. I wanted to stop violent criminals and terrorists.
Thank you. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm out of time. I'll yield back.
Thank the gentleman, and now I'm going to recognize the gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member. Mr. Parker, Ms. Parker, after serving your country as a special agent for the FBI, you landed in a soft, cushy position as a paid contributor at none other than Fox News. Isn't that correct?
Actually, that was not correct. When I initially left the FBI,
You're not a contributor?
I am at this point, but when I left the FBI, I was not initially a paid contributor for Fox.
But you are a paid contributor now.
Today I am, but when I left the FBI, I was not.
And you get paid to create content at Fox News, isn't that correct?
I get paid to speak the truth.
So you create content at Fox News, don't you? Giving your view on things? That's content creation, isn't it?
What I do is I speak the facts and I speak the truth based on my experience at the FBI.
And you get paid to do that?
I get paid to speak facts and I get
And are you on
paid
the
to
clock?
speak the truth.
Are you on the clock right now?
Am I on the clock right now?
Yeah.
No.
You're not getting paid right now for being a lobbyist?
No, sir. I'm not getting
Or for
paid to
any
be a
other
lobbyist.
purpose?
Excuse me?
You're not getting paid as you sit here right now to be here?
I am not getting paid to be here. No, I am not,
All right,
sir.
fair enough. Mr. Whitson, you also served as an FBI agent before falling into a very lucrative position as the legal director at the Foundation for Government Accountability, correct?
That was my former position, yes.
And well, what is your current position now?
So I currently serve as the Senior Director of Federal Affairs.
And it's a pretty lucrative upgrade from where you first started.
The position I'm in now?
Yeah, you're making more money now than you were when you first started, right?
Yes.
And would it surprise you to know that your funding between 2013 and 2022, 6 conservative foundations tied to billionaire donors sunk $44 million into your organization, correct?
I don't know the precise numbers.
You don't know that? It wouldn't surprise you, though.
But that wouldn't surprise me at all.
And your largest known source of funding between 2013 and 2022 was a foundation controlled by Illinois billionaire Dick Uihlein, who invested over $18 million into your operation. And another source of your funding was the 85 Fund, which gave you $2 million between 2013 and 2022. It is among the network that is controlled by Leonard Leo, who received over $1 billion in contributions from a single billionaire to fund his continued takeover of our court system. And so you get paid to promote an agenda which includes rolling back child labor laws and stripping child workplace protections. Isn't that correct?
No, that's not correct.
And your organization has also worked to stop Medicaid expansion and to slash food stamps, correct?
What do you mean by slash food stamps?
Well, that means cut food stamps, cut the money. And y'all have been advocating for that. And you also were among the organizations that wrote the notorious Project 2025, which is the radical right-wing agenda, the blueprint that President Trump is implementing along with co-president Musk, correct?
I'm not aware of us writing anything in Project 2025.
Now, Mr. Stout, your organization must be brand new because I haven't been able to come up with anything on Reform the Bureau, which is the name of your outfit, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
You just started it?
I started in December.
And have you been successful at recruiting any billionaire donors for your efforts?
No, sir, I haven't. It's a grassroots level.
So if I had more time, I would ask Dr. Hunt a question because he's the only non-paid individual up here not promoting a right-wing agenda. but I've run out of time. So, gosh, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman, and I will now recognize, just a word before that, probably most of the people who appear before us have to make a living somehow. That's okay. We all get paid salaries or whatever. Not unusual, not scary. With that being said, I will recognize the gentleman from Missouri for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the witnesses for coming here to testify today. Ms. Parker, thank you for your testimony. In your testimony, you relate the misuse by the FBI of SWAT resources, and you give the example of a nonviolent first-time January 6th offenders, one SWAT team spending overnight in a hotel 4.5 hours away to arrest grandparents in their late 70s. Sound like some dangerous hombres to me. On September 23rd, 2022, we're all familiar with the case of a pro-life activist and homeschool father of 7, Mark Houck's. No criminal record. He was arrested in a SWAT raid, guns drawn in front of his family. Then there's 73-year-old pro-life activist Chester Gallagher, who was arrested for nonviolent violation of the FACE Act. And then there was pro-life activist Paul Vaughn, arrested in an early morning raid by the FBI, guns drawn in front of his 7 children. Sound like some really dangerous offenders to me. But pro-lifers aren't the only ones who have been targeted by the Biden FBI. Vanessa Sivage, a nurse at Texas Children's Hospital, read the story of whistleblower Ethan Heim, who we're familiar with, who exposed gender transition procedures being done at Texas Children's Hospital, despite the hospital having proclaimed that they were no longer doing those procedures because the Attorney General of Texas was investigating that clinic for child abuse. Vanessa stepped forward and basically confirmed Dr. Heim's story. She was then visited 2 months later by the FBI. And then, of course, the anti-Catholic memorandum that we're familiar with. I have that here in my hand right now. Just some simple questions. First of all, this is labeled as a domain perspective. Ms. Parker, what is a domain perspective?
That's a document that, from my understanding, was distributed within the FBI as intelligence. Someone formulated that document, and it was published internally, and it had a stamp of intelligence on it that was signed off by multiple individuals within the Richmond field office. And part of that memorandum, first page, says, quote, FBI Richmond makes this assessment with high confidence based on FBI investigations, local law enforcement agency reporting, and liaison reporting with various degrees of corroboration and access. What does the term, high confidence mean to you, Ms. Parker? When I hear high confidence, I want to believe that it's trustworthy, that I can count on that is factual, that is truth. And my understanding of that memorandum is that they use sources that would not typically be used to gather intelligence. And what was happening at the FBI quite frequently and was disturbing to many is that there were individuals taking their personal views, packaging it up, and creating a document and then stamping intelligence on it and distributing as if it was truth, as if it was almost the Bible. And that is an example of, abuse of your law enforcement power. You're allowed to have your own personal and political opinions, but when you go to work, you've got to leave those at the front door, and you have to exercise in an unbiased and fair manner and be truthful. And when you're getting an intelligence document, you want to hope that it is factually correct and it is true. And unfortunately, that was a document that Christopher Wray had to have rescinded because it was not accurate, and he found it mind-boggling and disgusting that it had ever been published.
Well, one thing I find mind-boggling, first of all, I am Catholic myself. I'm not a traditional Latin Mass Catholic. Often such people who prefer to go to the Latin Mass are referred to as traditionalist Catholics. And then so-called rad-trad or radical traditionalist Catholics are those who only go to Catholic Mass, who some of them believe that the regular English Mass is invalid or reject Vatican II or what have you, but not a single one of them I know even even own guns, much less are they radicals or whatever. And then when I look at this memorandum, I see they're quoting the Southern Poverty Law Center, just a viciously political defamatory group. I've worked a lot on immigration issues. I think Southern Poverty Law Center has declared every immigration reform group to be a racist or white supremacist group. They're just a walking defamation factory. Have you seen the Southern Poverty Law Center quoted in other FBI memos over the years?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not. But again, that was entirely inappropriate and never should have happened. And the FBI had to walk that back. But again, that is an example of weaponization. That is social weaponization at the FBI. It's entirely inappropriate, and it never should have happened.
The FBI not going after bad guys, but going after enemies of the political regime. Third world stuff. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
I thank the gentleman. By the way, the director of the FBI had to apologize for that. It's not a debunked theory. With that being said, I will recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Raskin.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. One of our colleagues referred to the weaponization of the DOJ and specifically focused on the January 6th defendants. That startled me because 140 American police officers were violently assaulted on that day, wounded, hospitalized, some of them disfigured, disabled, forced to leave police work. But he said that there would have been a better use of FBI and prosecutorial and investigative resources, and I wonder what he was referring to. And in any event, Dr. Hunt, do you agree with that assessment?
Thank you for that question. January 6th shocked and horrified me. That was a shameful day, not least because of the many attacks on our law enforcement officers. So any suggestion that is a low priority and should not be investigated is shocking to me. I can't imagine a more important devotion of resources by the FBI to anyone who would attack our nation's capital.
Some of our colleagues have again been going back to the idea that the Biden FBI was converted into some kind of political instrument. When I look at the prosecutions that come out of it, I'm thinking about the one of Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey, who's a Democrat, of Henry Cuellar, who's a Democrat, lots of other Democrats. Other than Donald Trump, I really can't think of any others on the Republican side, and I'm just getting the feeling that they think Donald Trump really should be above and beyond the law, and that's what this whole weaponization thing is about, other than setting the conditions to turn it into an instrument of revenge and retribution, as Donald Trump has promised. Do you think the FBI was acting as an instrument of partisanship in the last administration?
I can only speak from my personal experience, and I can say this. When I was an FBI agent, the men and women that I worked with, they based their investigations on facts and law. They based their investigations on predication. The worry I have is with respect to corruption today. When there's selective enforcement, and just as a regular American citizen, I'm not an insider now, when I see a high-level politician and charges are dropped and there's no reason, I, as an American citizen, don't understand why that's the case.
You're referring to Mayor Adams.
That's correct.
But there was a reason, which was he agreed to play on Donald Trump's political team, and the very Republican, conservative U.S. attorney for the Southern District said nothing had changed in terms of the facts of the case, nothing had changed in terms of the law, nothing changed in terms of the evidence. All that had changed was that he'd made this political alignment with Donald Trump. She resigned rather than participate in that corrupt bargain, as did her deputy, who said it would take a fool or a coward to accept that deal. He also clerked for a conservative Supreme Court justice and was active in the Federalist Society, and 5 other lawyers dropped out rather than do it until finally they had to force somebody to do it from D.C. who said he'd be willing to do it because he was about to leave his job. You say let's base it on the facts, and I'm really curious about this Signal group chat thing because the country's in an uproar about the fact that the most precious national security information was shared on a Signal group chat where a journalist was actually invited in accidentally by somebody to participate. And some of my colleagues seem to say, well, it was a one-shot deal. Let's just let it go. And it's no big deal. The FBI director's already said, no, nothing to see there. If this were a standard practice, just yes or no, do you think it would be a problem?
That would be a problem, yes.
Ms. Parker, do you agree it would be a problem if it were a standard practice?
My understanding, I was not on the Signal chat. I just know it.
Just yes or no,
probably
because
similar
I've
to
got
you.
little time. If you can answer.
A mistake was made, and
Okay,
people have
Mr.
taken
Stout, can you
ownership.
say, would it be a problem for it to be standard practice to conduct sensitive foreign policy on a Signal chat group?
Yes, I would.
Okay, and Mr. Whitson, do you agree?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it just came out like 10 minutes ago. Waltz's team set up at least 20 Signal group chats for crises across the world. So it was, as one might expect, a very standard practice with Mr. Waltz, and I'm sure this will raise the question of whether or not he really should continue in that position. But do you think that the FBI should investigate what the national security implications and what the public safety implications are of his having done that, Dr. Hunt?
So this comes back to the rule of law. As an FBI agent, there were strict rules about sensitive material. We had to be in a skiff. We had to take the utmost caution. So to treat other people that are more powerful differently definitely suggests to me a deviation from the rule of law.
All right, thank you, and I yield back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank the gentleman. You know, there's a difference between a mistake and purposeful, perpetrated policies
Chair.
are wrong.
Just point out, okay.
I beat you to it. I recognize the chairman of the whole committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Whitson, before you got what Mr. Johnson described as high-paying job as Senior Director of Federal Affairs Foundation for Government Accountability, you worked in the FBI, is that right?
Yes.
10 years in the FBI?
Yes.
And prior to that, you were in the United States Army?
Yes, sir.
300 combat missions in Iraq, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And your time at the FBI, you were special agent in the Directorate, supervisory special agent in the Directorate of Intelligence. Is that accurate?
Yes, Chairman.
In your testimony, and I just want to get you familiar with this subject matter, in your testimony you said one of the ways we can eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse is including the overspending on confidential human sources. You said that in your testimony, right?
Yes, Chairman.
Are you familiar with the Inspector General's report about the confidential human sources who were there on January 6, 2021 here at the Capitol? Have you read the report?
I haven't read that closely.
Well, let me tell you a few things that they say in there, and I want to ask you a few questions. He said there were 26 confidential human sources there at the Capitol that day. Does that surprise you?
No.
Doesn't surprise you. Okay. He said 17 of those 26 confidential human sources entered restricted space they weren't allowed to go into. Does that surprise you?
No.
Doesn't surprise you. They did things they weren't allowed to do.
Well, I'd need more details about, so were they doing it on their own? Were they told to do it? Were they, that kind of thing?
We want to know the answers to those questions too.
Yes, sir.
4 of them went inside the Capitol, and 2 of the 4 who went inside the Capitol were specifically asked by the FBI to be there that day for this. Does that surprise you?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
But I need to know more facts.
And does it surprise you that any of them, none of these individuals, to our knowledge, were charged with anything?
No, I mean, if they were tasked to be there.
Okay.
I would need more information.
Okay, well,
I'm
in
sorry.
your testimony, you talked about overspending on confidential human sources. Do you believe, is it likely these 26 were being paid by the FBI at the time they were doing this?
I think that's, if they are a confidential human source that's actually on the books, then it's highly likely that they were paid.
Highly likely they're being paid.
If they were tasked to do that.
Even if they weren't specifically asked to be there that day? You think there's likely they were paid?
So if they weren't asked to be there, I think usually they're giving us like a lump payment periodically, so it wouldn't be for a specific tasking necessarily. It'd be hard to answer that.
Are you familiar with what was released here earlier this week, the text communications between FBI agents regarding October 14th, 2020 New York Post story on the Hunter Biden laptop? Have you had a chance to review those?
I haven't seen those text messages.
Well, let me just read a couple to you here. It says, nobody on the call is authorized to comment on the New York Post story. Twitter is treating this as disinformation. I just want to read something that took place earlier that day. The way this day worked is the story came out. That day, Elvis Chan, a guy with the FBI, is meeting with the tech company, something he did on a regular basis in the run-up to the 2020 presidential election. At that meeting, someone asked, hey, there's this New York Post story. Is the laptop real? And we know this took place because we deposed Mr. Brady Olson, and he gave us this information. And he said, when that question was asked, the response was, yes, the laptop is real. Then we get these text messages, which we didn't have before, we just got them this week, these text messages which relate what happens after that. So the FBI has confirmed to Twitter at a FITF meeting on October 14th that the laptop is real. And then we have these text messages back and forth where they says no one is authorized to comment further. Twitter is treating this as disinformation. You find that troubling that the FBI knew something was real, confirmed it at a meeting, then changed their story and went to no comment, no further comment, and allowed the tech companies to run with the idea that this story was disinformation?
Yeah, I do think that's problematic, and I do think the relationships that they tried to build with members of the FBI with these other organizations were problematic.
Yeah, and the ranking member said, oh, the Republicans want to say the FBI was political, and what really wasn't the case. If this is not political, I do not know what is, because this was the whole basis for the 51 former Intel officials doing their letter. And the FBI knew. Now we have written evidence they knew, coupled with the deposition we took before where they admitted this. And then later in the day when they're meeting with other tech companies, they go with no comment. And they even admit here Twitter is running with the disinformation story. Even before the 51 Intel officials come out with their letter, which is baloney, they're running with that. And the FBI was part of fostering and promoting that story.
It's unacceptable.
Totally unacceptable.
And it shows how one bad apple, and there were probably others, but you can see how much of a problem that is. And that one bad apple behaves that way, the entire Bureau's reputation is impacted. Yeah. Trust is lost across the country. And so that's why it's so important to find folks like that, going back to the entrenched bureaucrats. You have to find them and remove them, because that's all it takes is one bad apple.
I think that was point one in your testimony, which is exactly what Ms. Bondi and Mr. Patel are doing, is getting rid of those individuals who foster this kind of political environment where you're going after your political foes, where you're telling things, saying things, allowing things to be believed that aren't accurate when you knew the truth all along.
That's right.
I yield back.
Thank the chairman. I now recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, Jasmine Crockett.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I first just want to begin with a news alert. Guess what? Joe Biden is not the president anymore. So maybe we can move on. Maybe we can move into the present, because it seems like we are living in the past. And listen, these are not the good old days, you know, like you used to sit around and your grandparents would talk to you about what used to happen. What we need to be talking about is how we are going to legislate, because I think that some of my colleagues have confused what our jobs are. And I get that we're sitting in judiciary. And so it may seem as if we are here to be litigators, but we are here to be legislators, which means that we are supposed to be writing laws, not trying to have our own trials and determine whether or not something is true or not, or whatever the case is, or who should be sued, who shouldn't be sued. All I know is that a great American hero, a good senator out of New Jersey, said something to the effect yesterday as he was shattering the record for holding the floor, a record that had been held by another racist in this country. As he shattered that, he said something about the fact that this should not be about left versus right. It should be about right versus wrong. And I am going to tell you that I want us to focus on right versus wrong. The reason that we are struggling right now in this country as it relates to people not trusting agencies, honestly, a lot of it is because of elected leaders. Let me tell you, one of the things that the chairman and I actually agree upon, we don't agree on a lot, is that we both know that there has been a sharp incline as it relates to threats upon our lives. Regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on, we both know and agree that as sitting members of Congress, we both are enduring more death threats than anybody should in this country. And I believe that it is because of the divisive rhetoric, and it is because of the selective enforcement of things. And so when we have, and I'm gonna be clear, because I had remarks and I'm going a whole other way. To have the sitting attorney general go on, and I'm gonna call it faux news. I know some of y'all love it, but it's fake to me. To have her go on Fox News and to then decide that she wanted to send a threat to me It was wrong. Because here it is, she is the highest law enforcement agent in this country, and people are watching and they are consuming this information and they are believing that simply because I decided that I wanted to exercise my right to free speech, which I am not abridged from doing, that she then wanted to then politicize something that should not be politicized. I don't like Elon Musk. I'm gonna say it 50,000 times. I don't like him. I don't like that he going out there and he firing people. I think that he's a crook because somehow the rest of us can't sit around and get whatever federal contracts we want. The rest of us can't sit around and get law enforcement and get them somehow ordained as federal law enforcement to protect him. The rest of us can't get our dealerships protected by the federal government. That is somebody that is operating above the law. For whatever reason, just because he has a lot of money, more money than everybody else. And yes, I am happy to see that on my birthday, which is what I said, there were peaceful protests around this world against him because he is a problem. And so you never should have somebody that is sitting that high and is going to sit up here and threaten a sitting member of Congress when she knew good and well, if she watched the entire thing, that I specifically told protesters to make sure you consult with lawyers, just like I've told protesters over and over and over in the history of me advising people to go out and exercise their constitutional right. The fact that there are other sitting members that have received letters of threat from this new DOJ tells me that they are about retribution and they are not about following the law. The reason that our party, or I won't even say our party, our country is torn apart is because we can't even agree on right versus wrong. This should not be left versus right. The only thing that we're asking is that we have law enforcement that will show up when there is an actual crime. If somebody calls and says, hey, I need you to investigate this cyber crime, or I need you to investigate this child pornography, or I need you to investigate this robbery, then we want somebody to show up, and we don't want them to look at us and act as if just because I'm black or because I'm woman that I am not worthy of having that case investigated, because we have an administration that is continuously railing against diversity, equity, and inclusion, or we don't need people that show up that feel like diversity should not be valued. That is why we should have somebody that may show up and looks like me. The final thing that I'll say, because you've been gracious, is this. When I first became a public defender, I had no criminal defense experience. And I walked in and I told my boss, Charlie, I said, listen, you should hire me. He said, why? I said, because I'm black. Charlie looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, let me tell you something. When I walk in, I'm going to walk in with a level of rapport and understanding that maybe some of my other colleagues will not. Charlie offered me my job, and I worked my butt off, and I worked really, really hard for all of my clients, not just those that look like me, and that is what it looks like to serve. Thank you.
Thank the gentlelady, and I recognize the gentleman for Kansas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I do want to give the witnesses a heads up. I do intend to ask them questions over the course of this 5 minutes. I spent a dozen years as the chief law enforcement official of my state. I've never claimed to be a cop, not a certified officer, but I had the privilege of serving as our state attorney general. I've had a lot of conversations with law enforcement officers all over the state of Kansas, local cops, elected local officers and sheriffs, cops that worked directly for me under our supervision, cops that worked in local agencies, and all sorts of federal law enforcement officers, as well as federal prosecutors who operated in our jurisdiction. I will tell you, in the course of those 12 years, I never saw an FBI agent perform less than honorably, not once. And I never recall a single time in those rooms. Now, if I'd go down the street to the political party meetings, I'd hear conversations like we heard some today, and we've heard a lot over the last 4 years. I'd hear all that all the time. If I turned on the television, I'd see it all the time. I never heard it among cops working a case. I heard folks who knew each other and liked each other and cooperated with each other who said, how are we going to get that child molester off the streets? How are we going to solve this murder? How are we going to deal with that case of elder abuse? How are we going to deal with that crime that's in front of us? That's the FBI I know, and it's the law enforcement world that I know. And I would just ask, Mr. Whitson, you're first up here, is that consistent or inconsistent with the law enforcement community you operated in?
It's absolutely consistent. I'd say I had partners that I worked with for years on cases, and if you asked me what political party those people were in, I couldn't tell you. And they couldn't tell you the same for me when I was in the FBI. So that is the real FBI. When you go out to the field offices and you get away from headquarters, that's the real FBI, the real work. That's what they're like.
And Mr. Stout, you were a local or state officer or both before being federal. How about you? Is what I just described consistent or inconsistent with your experience?
Yes, sir, it is consistent, and I would tack on to that something earlier that Ms. Crockett said that I'm interested in about galvanizing this country. What will bring us all together? You know, something.
Please do it briefly.
You mentioned there's a special place in hell for pedophiles and child pornographers, and we have systems in place at the FBI, but we can make those systems a little bit better, a little bit tighter. I'm prepared to talk about it later today if you wish.
That sounds very good. Let me tell you a brief story, and then I have some follow-on questions. So during the course of the time I was serving in that role, we had a terrible case. It was a racist, bigoted individual from a neighboring state who crossed the line into our state with the intent of killing a group of folks because of their faith. He went to a religious institution. He shot the place up. He killed, as I recall, 3 people. He was immediately apprehended. He has since died in prison. But there was, at the moment that happened, there was a motivated federal and state through the local authorities response. A lot of folks on the scene, everybody trying to figure out how do we secure this thing, how do we fix it. And then there was a professional discussion, who's going to go first in the prosecution, because you had a state murder and you had federal hate crimes, as well as some other federal crimes perhaps. And man, the press loved it. I mean, every day there was a headline about this dispute between the district attorney and the United States attorney and the local cops and the federal cops and who's going to go first. And finally it was decided the state would go first, and the district attorney announced it was filing capital murder charges with a notice of intent to seek the death penalty under our state law. And in the same article where the local press reported that, they then in the next paragraph said, and next, there'll be a decision on a federal prosecution where the penalties may be stiffer. Think about that. Think about that. I offer the story up for this reason. I think there may be a perception outside the cops on the beat, federal and state, who do this work in our communities every single day, that what we talk about up here is reality and that somehow the federal law enforcement officers are superior to their state counterparts. I don't think that's true. I don't think it's close to true. And I don't think what we're hearing today and heard the last 4 years reflects what really happens with the vast, vast majority of the federal and state cops on the beat. And I guess I would just ask this. Mr. Whitson, you suggested we ought to move the FBI out of Washington, D.C., and the current director has already made some moves to that effect. Talk to me in my remaining time about how you think that might affect our ability to get this narrative back on track so it's the cops on the beat keeping our communities safe that drives it instead of all this political circus in this town that drives it.
Well, briefly, just right now, almost a third of all FBI employees are stationed in the D.C. area. The crime that's taking place across America is not all happening in the DC area. It's happening everywhere in pockets all over the country, Kansas, every member's district. And so moving the FBI out of DC and back into the field office is going to help that. But it's also cheaper. DC is an expensive area. I don't need to tell anyone that, right? Moving the headquarters to a lower cost area is not only cheaper for the federal government and the American taxpayer, but it's also cheaper for the workers. For the federal employees that have to commute every day to the office, if it's in a place that's a better quality of living, an easier commute, that's better. And then the last reason, to be real brief, is the political makeup. And so my colleague at FGA, Hayden DeBlois, did a paper on this to look at federal senior executive employees. What is the political makeup? And across the country, they lean heavily Democrat by 30, but in DC, it goes up to 40. And so that's not to say, not trying to be not Democrat or not Republican, but we really want to put it in a place where it's more representative of the entire country and not just one side of the country. And that's why we see that when a conservative comes in, the whole weaponization rises to the issue because the headquarters is populated by people of the opposite political.
The gentleman's time has expired. Okay. I thank the gentleman. I now recognize the gentleman for Texas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for having this incredibly important hearing where we can better understand the systematic abuses of the Biden administration for the past 4 years. Our colleagues on the other side want to encourage us to move on move on from a federal government that was weaponized against the American people that they are supposed to represent and protect. Move on after our FBI was targeting parents who were concerned that their children were being indoctrinated into radical transgender ideologies in their public schools. Move on after the left weaponized the federal government to create a mass censorship industrial complex violating our First Amendment rights. We're supposed to move on after they targeted Catholic Americans, traditional Americans, and labeled them violent extremists. We're told that there's a problem that we can't agree on what's right and wrong, and I agree, that is a huge problem. It's a problem that the other side of the aisle can't recognize that censorship is wrong. It's a problem that the other side of the aisle can't recognize that it's wrong for the FBI to target parents concerned about what they're learning in their schools. It's a problem that the other side of the aisle can't recognize that it's a problem whenever our federal government goes after Christian Americans. That's a serious problem, and that's something we should be able to agree on, but unfortunately, we can't. We saw unprecedented levels of weaponization under the Biden administration against the same American people that it was supposed to be looking out for. Christopher Wray created an internal memo that slandered traditional Catholics as anti-Semites and white supremacists. It suggested that the FBI monitor traditional Catholics and even set the stage for FBI informants entering places of worship. At the same time, remember, this was happening while Joe Biden was, of course, facilitating the mass immigration of illegal criminals into our country. Not keeping us safe in that instance, that's for sure. Thankfully, and I think the American people are very thankful that we finally have a president and a head of the FBI and head of the DOJ who actually represent us and want to protect us. I want to thank all of the witnesses for being here. We really appreciate your testimony and your time here. Mr. Whitson, I'd like to start with you. The FBI utilized a so-called hate map from the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, as it was going after traditional Catholics and labeling them domestic extremists. Do you think that that's an appropriate source?
Absolutely not.
Do you know some of the other groups that the SPLC labels as hate groups or extremist groups?
No, I don't, off the top of my head.
I can name a few. They also name the Alliance Defending Freedom, the Family Research Council, and Moms for Liberty as hate groups as well. Do you find it concerning that they were using the SPLC as a source?
Yeah, I find it deeply concerning.
Do you think that Catholics who celebrate the traditional Latin Mass are a threat to the American people?
I don't, because I'm one that does that on occasion.
Can you recall, before Joe Biden was in office, any time whenever the FBI specifically targeted a group of Americans solely because of their religious faith?
No.
Do you think there's any evidence to suggest that harassing Catholic Americans keeps Americans safe?
Not at all.
Got it. Do you think that we've seen a move away from this sort of flagrant weaponization since President Trump has entered office?
Absolutely.
And what do you think that this committee can do to help ensure that we don't see a return of that sort of weaponization?
Well, I think number one, it's accountability, right? That's not going to surprise you. I'm from the Foundation for Government Accountability. And so it's not enough to identify a problem and then just move on. You've got to hold people accountable. And it's going back to the earlier point. If you want to re-earn the trust of Americans in the FBI, they have to see people held accountable. But then at the same time, you need to refocus and look at what are the problems we have right now, and that's the wide open border, that's the violent crime. And so you need to press the FBI to make sure they're pushing resources where they should.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. I'll yield 5 minutes to myself. I'm going to ask you all a question. What would you do if you were sitting where we sit? What legislation In other words, every administration can come and go. The goal here is someday be sure that at the Attorney General's office, the FBI, that we do not have to worry about this anymore, the Department of Justice. Is there any legislation, I'll start with Mr. Whitson, but I'll go all the way down to Dr. Hunt, any legislation you would suggest specifically to help, or just to help in general, if you, again, were a legislator, if you were a member of Congress?
Thank you for that question. I think to start, I would codify the president's authority to fire insubordinate or unproductive employees. And so it's the Schedule F. I would extend that to all executive branch employees. I don't think it would have the kind of effect that some on the left have claimed. I think it would just give whoever the executive is, whether that's a Democrat or Republican, the ability to remove people that are, again, unproductive or insubordinate. At the end of the day, federal workers shouldn't have more protection than private sector workers. But get this, Chairman, a private employee is 5 times more likely to get fired or laid off from work than a government employee.
You have some interesting committee hearings here. If you've been watching with us, of course, the United States House continuing to investigate the AutoPen administration. There was something back when I was in mainstream news when you had the question of, is it sunny outside? Is it rainy outside? Is the sky blue? You know, there's just certain natural truths that come into question, and then there's a simple answer to it. So either the people testifying who've been there, who have been through horrific situations, who have seen the corruption of a weaponized deep state, either they're not telling the truth or they've seen these horrible things. Mind you, they've sworn under oath, perhaps facing the penalty of perjury. So I think we need to heed their warning as the United States House of Representatives continues to get to the bottom of corruption in the last administration. If you're just joining us now, 10 minutes before 4 o'clock Eastern at the White House there, I'm Robert McNeely, live from the beautiful, friendliest village on the plains, of course, Auburn, Alabama. And we're looking now at the Rose Garden, something that President Trump is looking to revamp, along with some of the other beautiful things that sit in and around the campus of the White House. As you know from his Truth Social post just the other day, sadly, that Andrew Jackson tree, I believe now around 200 years old, will have to be uprooted, taken away. He got criticized for that as well, but you know, as with forestry management, we have some experts actually here at the network who studied that, and that can actually hurt the foundation of the White House itself. So regardless, President Trump, everything he touches turns to gold. He has somewhat of that Midas touch, and that is the focus today. Make America wealthy again. It's Liberation Day, as President Trump has mentioned, perhaps 2.0, because we had our first Liberation Day on November 5th, 2024, when you, the American people, sent him back to the White House. And today, it's when these reciprocal tariffs go back into place. An exciting time for our great nation because it's just about a fair playing field. And let's look back to the first administration. He got rid of NAFTA. He renegotiated the USMCA, of course, the United States, Mexico, and Canada coming together on real and true free trade. The Canadian government not being so fair in recent years again, really targeting our dairy farmers and putting tariffs on Minnesota and Wisconsin in the dairy land. And that's just not going to be something that we will tolerate anymore. And in turn, we're talking about $5 trillion coming back into the United States. The more recent announcements having been Hyundai and also Toyota. But we saw that last week with President Trump hosting Governor Landry of Louisiana, also House Speaker Mike Johnson, and Leader Steve Scalise, all great raging Cajuns from the beautiful state of Louisiana, talking about those new plants that will be opening not only in that fine state, but also Savannah, Georgia. So steel production, car manufacturing, also thousands of jobs opening up in the southeastern region of the United States. Thank you to our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. Colonial Metals Group, what's your best bet against inflation, the best hedge against all that nonsense out there, regardless of who's leading and steering this ship? Colonial Metals Group. Paul Stone, the great CEO of this wonderful company, they truly are the best when it comes to gold and silver and what it means for you and your financial future. So scan that QR code right now, shield your savings today, and get the exclusive offers that are only offered here through Right Side Broadcasting Network. This free, no obligation gold guide will ensure that you can perhaps make those big decisions in life, like sending maybe your student to Auburn University or preparing for retirement. Colonial Metals Group has all those options for you. This no obligation guide will detail what happened exactly to the gold when we went off that gold standard in 1971. Well, I'll tell you, it's skyrocketed 7,000% between 1971 and just last year. It does not go down, only going up. So this is why you need to add this to your portfolio in addition to properties and even perhaps assets and anything else that you have with 401ks or IRAs. You can even roll that into gold and silver, believe it or not. So scan that QR code now, shield your savings today, and get everything that will be protecting you and your retirement. Colonial Metals Group, thank you for being with us today here, sponsoring us at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. And now I'm very excited about this sponsor as well, because it's brand new to the network, the 1775coffee.com/RSBN. Code RSBN, of course, easy to remember. This ultimate guide, 1775 and Rumble just released this beautiful package, the first anti-aging coffee. This ultimate longevity bundle goes for $250 in normal market value. We're offering it to you here, the viewers, $99 for this great bundle. This is truly a gift. It's at more than half the price off. This isn't just a caffeine fix. This coffee is infused with CA-AKG. So this is a breakthrough compound to support cellular growth and protection. So this is more than just a cup of coffee. This can boost endurance and reduce biological aging by up to 8 years in 7 months. And let me tell you, everyone on television, we're trying to beat Father Time, and this is a great natural way to do that. So inside the bundle, you're getting their longevity coffee, the ultra rare pea berry roast, an exclusive $17.75 offer that you won't find anywhere else. This is over $250 worth in value. You're getting that for $99, but there's only 1,000 being released. And as I said before, when it comes to these deals, I'm going to jump on this right after work today. So I hope that we can sell out this 1,000 today on the Make America Wealthy Again stage before I get my hands on this. So I'm challenging you, the viewers, to do so. If that's not enough, every dollar you spend gets a shot at winning a Cybertruck and also $30,000 cash. But you've got less than a month to enter. So do so today, 1775coffee.com/RSBN. And that code, once again, RSBN. Grab your longevity today, 1775coffee.com/RSBN. Save $150, live a balanced life, and reverse aging by up to 8 years in 7 months. Sounds like a good deal to me. And as Mr. Matthew Alvarez has been bothering me on a daily basis to get a truck, I could use that Cybertruck. So again, I implore you, the viewers, jump into this contest before I do, because I bring a little Irish luck to about everything that I do. So 1775coffee.com/RSBN. Thank you for sponsoring us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. And if you were with us earlier, of course, the U.S. House investigating the Otto-Penn Biden FBI, the weaponization of the Department of Justice, and how the witnesses there, who are career civil servants, speaking to the fact that Pam Bondi as the Attorney General and Kash Patel as FBI Director have brought such a breath of fresh air to the department. And sad to see people like Jasmine Crockett, who is just so disrespectful. It's really dishonorable, the fact that she is there in Congress. When you write to your elected officials, I implore you as well, write the honorable. It's the proper title. But for Jasmine Crockett, I think it's time to start calling her the dishonorable. I have never seen anyone in recent memory, maybe you have, the viewers at home, but I can't remember someone who has been so rude and disrespectful regardless of political ideology in an honorable role in Congress. Let's make politics great again, maybe even kind again. Let's gather more flies with honey, as they say. Jasmine Crockett, I'm going to give them a freebie for their communications team. Run Jasmine Crockett. We'd love to see that, because someone like J.D. Vance or Ron DeSantis or Marco Rubio or whoever is the Republican nominee come 2028, we'll have a field day with someone who is just as deplorable as she is. But now, on to something happier, of course, awaiting President Trump at the Make America Wealthy Again event. This is Liberation Day, as President Trump has been speaking of on Truth Social, how excited he is for the reciprocal tariffs to take place. Of course, the Rose Garden, you see that they're live, adorning with the beautiful American flags, also some hard hats and our middle class. This is what it's all about. The deep state globalists, the living former presidents, these are President Trump's predecessors, are globalists. And I name them almost daily on the show. Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Hussein Obama, and Joseph R. Biden Jr., otherwise known as Autopen, gave up the middle class to the globalists. They sold this country out. The proof is in the pudding. We see it on a daily basis. President Trump has really pulled that curtain open. And if you're following any of the social media at White House, you can follow them now on Truth Social. You see the fact that whether it's the MAGA Minute with Caroline Leavitt, whether it's other videos the White House is producing, you've seen the record of these past administrations with NAFTA, with different engagements overseas, with the nation building, with the weapons of mass destruction that never existed. Thank you, George W. Bush. The countless lives that have been lost because of federal intervention with the military-industrial complex, the deep state, the bureaucracy. I can go on and on and on about it. But we have now a Republican front, a group of people, populist and big tent in nature, who are willing to ask those tough questions. We saw it yesterday with Congresswoman Ana Paulina Luna from the Sunshine State of Florida, asking people, this expert panel on the JFK assassination, mind you, not necessarily conservative Republicans. In fact, many of them liberal Democrats or even socialists who want this country to operate freely and fairly and understand that free and fair decisions and elections and transparency will ensure a constitutional republic as envisioned by our founders nearly 250 years ago. And that includes the filmmaker Oliver Stone. That's what's been so interesting about this MAGA big tent movement that goes beyond one person, President Donald Trump, who has been speaking on these issues going back to 1987, if not even before. He would go on Oprah Winfrey's show and talk about the time that the Japanese government was manipulating their currency, just as the Chinese Communist Party is today. And that's something that Ronald Reagan holds in common with President Trump. Well, so many different policy points, but the fact that he was known as the free market capitalist. But what's easily forgotten, towards the end of the Reagan tenure in that second term, he slapped a 100% tariff on the Japanese government. And we were friends quickly after that incredible conflict of World War II, roughly 40 years after that or so, being trading partners and relying on one another as we do today with many of their great industries, including Toyota, among other brilliant companies. But at that time, the Japanese were taking advantage of world markets in an unfair way. President Trump was there talking about it. Oprah Winfrey was once in the same seat as President Trump saying, oh my goodness, if you've read letters to Trump, it's really quite entertaining. She would write letters to President Trump saying how much she enjoyed Mar-a-Lago and also the fact that if they ran together, they could help change the world and protect the middle class. And President Trump mentioning how much she enjoyed dining at Mar-a-Lago with a couple of pieces of key lime pie. And who doesn't love key lime pie? That's one of my personal favorites as well. As you look live, there's Steve Witkoff. He is part of this. I mean, really an enjoyable, amazing, incredible job he's doing as the Middle East envoy, but it seems as if he's involved with so many different fronts, including saving hostages like Mark Fogel out of Russia, of course, our Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. So many great cabinet officials and staff on hand for this incredible ceremony and announcement. reciprocal tariff days of some of the major governments around the world. I asked President Trump about this personally when we had the opportunity to visit with him en route to PBI from Joint Base Andrews, about to board Air Force One. And I asked him, Mr. President, what do you think about this? You have the Australians that are not going to join in reciprocal tariffs. They see it as bad for their country. I said, please explain how this will work out for America. And he said it will bring tremendous wealth. And we're estimating around $5 trillion, if not more, coming from the administration and their numbers as they're breaking it down. There you see live Vice President J.D. Vance in attendance on a rather cloudy day in the nation's capital, but nonetheless beautiful as always, the Rose Garden, an ornate spot right outside of the Oval Office for President Trump to really detail what this will look like with reciprocal tariffs. This was a day he was looking immensely forward to. Really the hallmark of his presidency, among peace through strength and also securing the border. Really it goes hand in hand with the economy. As he's mentioned, too many jobs stolen by globalist policies, too many manufacturing plants shut down and sent to Mexico. In fact, I've seen it myself. I've seen family cars in the past that, the Oldsmobile that used to be around, or other great cars that we've had over the course of 20 plus years. You get those from Mexico and you usually end up with a lemon because they weren't high quality, they weren't well manufactured, being overseas and in certain countries just not up to par, especially our friends to the south. They have run their country into the ground. But fortunately, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem meeting with Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico. She said there's a lot of work to be done on a number of things, whether it's the fentanyl poisoning, stopping that fully, getting there. But you've seen border crossings just last month down to 8,000. We had, in certain cases, AutoPen president and Alejandro Mayorkas, his alleged Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, and maybe part-time border czar with Kamala Harris. They didn't really seem to do their job. You would have cases of thousands and thousands, 60,000 plus, coming over in 1 month, sometimes even more, into the hundreds of thousands. But now just 8,000 last month, and it becomes less and less and less, as we're not even into 100 days of the new administration. So this is a star-studded event with media, also middle-class workers. Of course, looks like some of our great coal miners and the hard hats in office, who really are those broad shoulders who have helped build this great nation. And here we are, President Donald Trump coming out to the Rose Garden. We will send it there live for his comments to celebrate this Liberation Day with reciprocal tariffs. We'll toss it live now to the White House Rose Garden.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Nice crowd. What a good-looking group of people. Well, we have some very, very good news today, and a lot of good things are happening for our country. Please sit down. My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. Waiting for a long time. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. Going to make it wealthy, good and wealthy. For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. American steelworkers, auto workers, farmers, and skilled craftsmen, we have a lot of them here with us today. They really suffered gravely. They watched in anguish as foreign leaders have stolen our jobs, foreign cheaters have ransacked our factories, and foreign scavengers have torn apart our once beautiful American dream. We had an American dream that you don't hear so much about. You did 4 years ago, and you are now, but you don't too often, and for many years and decades even, you didn't hear too much about. Our country and its taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years, but it is not going to happen anymore. It's not going to happen. In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal. That means they do it to us and we do it to them. Very simple. Can't get any simpler than that. This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our declaration of economic independence. For years, hardworking American citizens were forced to sit on the sidelines as other nations got rich and powerful, much of it at our expense. But now it's our turn to prosper, and in so doing, use trillions and trillions of dollars to reduce our taxes and pay down our national debt, and it'll all happen very quickly. With today's action, we are finally going to be able to make America great again, greater than ever before. Jobs and factories will come roaring back into our country, and you see it happening already. We will supercharge our domestic industrial base. We will pry open foreign markets and break down foreign trade barriers. And ultimately, more production at home will mean stronger competition and lower prices for consumers. This will be indeed the golden age of America. It's coming back, and we're going to come back very strongly. We're pleased to be joined on this momentous occasion by Vice President J.D. Vance. J.D., thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Where are you, J.D.? No, that wasn't too hard to find. I was looking, you know, he likes to take a low-key attitude, so it'd usually be sitting right in front. He's gaining a lot of confidence, Mike, isn't he? And nearly my entire cabinet is here, as well as Speaker Mike Johnson, who's done an amazing job. And with the great success we had last night in Florida, we have a majority of 7. And 7's like a lot when we had it at 1, right? You've done a fantastic job. And many of the members of the House and Senate are with us. Senators, Congressmen, thank you all for being with us. We appreciate it. For decades, the United States slashed our trade barriers on other countries, while those nations placed massive tariffs on our products and created outrageous non-monetary barriers to decimate our industries. And in many cases, the non-monetary barriers were worse than the monetary ones. They manipulated their currencies, subsidized their exports, stole our intellectual property, imposed exorbitant VAT taxes to disadvantage our products, adopted unfair rules and technical standards, and created filthy pollution havens. They were absolutely filthy, but they always came to us and they said, we're violating, we should pay for it. It's all detailed in a very big report by the U.S. Trade Representative on foreign trade barriers, and I'll just hold it up for you. It's available, and you don't have to pay too much. As I understand it, you'll pay nothing. It's a lot of work for something, actually, because it's a special book. It's very, frankly, it's very upsetting when you read it, when you see what people have been doing to us for 30 years. This all happened with no response from the United States of America, none whatsoever. But those days are over. Let me offer just a few examples of the vicious attacks our workers have faced for so many years. The United States charges other countries only a 2.4 tariff on motorcycles. Meanwhile, Thailand and others are charging much higher prices, like 60%. India charges 70%. Vietnam charges 75%, and others are even higher than that. Likewise, until today, the United States has for decades charged a 2.5 tariff. Think of that, 2.5% on foreign-made automobiles. The European Union charges us more than 10% tariffs, and they have 20% VATs, much, much higher. India charges 70%, and perhaps worst of all are the non-monetary restrictions imposed by South Korea, Japan, and very many other nations as a result of these colossal trade barriers. 81% of the cars in South Korea are made in South Korea. 94% of the cars in Japan are made in Japan. Toyota sells 1 million foreign-made automobiles into the United States, and General Motors sells almost none. Ford sells very little. None of our companies are allowed to go into other countries. And I say that, friend and foe, and in many cases the friend is worse than the foe in terms of trade. But such horrendous imbalances have devastated our industrial base and put our national security at risk. I don't blame these other countries at all for this calamity. I blame former presidents and past leaders who weren't doing their job. They let it happen, and they let it happen to an extent that nobody can even believe. That's why, effective at midnight, we will impose a 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles. Thank you. Brian, I'd like to have you come up here for a second, okay? I just see him sitting. He's been a fan of ours, and he understands this business a lot better than the economists, a lot better than anybody. Brian, say a few words, please, would you? Thank you, Mr. Thank you. It's a great honor to have you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I grew up just north of Detroit, Michigan, in Macomb County, known as the home of the Reagan Democrats. My first vote for president was for Ronald Reagan. I thought that was going to be the best president I ever saw in my lifetime until Donald J. Trump came along. I have watched my entire life, I have watched plant after plant after plant in Detroit and in the metro Detroit area close. There are now plants sitting idle. There are now plants that are underutilized, and Donald Trump's policies are going to bring product back into those underutilized plants. There's going to be new investment. There's going to be new plants built. And the UAW members, and I brought 20 of them with me, they're sitting right over here. We support Donald Trump's policies on tariffs 100%. So, Mr. President, we can't thank you enough. And in 6 months or a year, we're going to begin to see the benefits. I can't wait to see what's happening 3 or 4 years down the road. Thank you, Mr. President.
What a great guy. He got it right from the beginning. He got it before almost anybody else. This group over there, they got it too. And you know, we won the state of Michigan. We won almost all of them, but we won Michigan by a lot, and I want to just thank you all. The auto workers were fantastic. The Teamsters were fantastic. Everyone was pretty good, I will tell you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You're going to be very happy very soon, and you probably see what's happening with all of the, not only car companies, but car companies in particular. You see it with all of the ones they're moving, they're announcing day in, day out. You're seeing it. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. With today's actions, we're also standing up for our great farmers and ranchers who are brutalized by nations all over the world. Brutalized. Canada, by the way, imposes a 250 to 300% tariff on many of our dairy products. They do the first can of milk. They do the first little carton of milk at a very low price, but after that it gets bad, and then it gets up to 275, 300%. So when they're figuring what's Canada charging, they say, oh, about 2%, 3%. But take a look at what happens down the road. When you look a little bit, it's not a pretty picture, and we don't like it, and it's not fair. It's not fair to our farmers. It's not fair to our country. And with countries like Canada, you know, we subsidize a lot of countries and keep them going and keep them in business. In the case of Mexico, it's $300 billion a year. In the case of Canada, it's close to $200 billion a year. And I say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? I mean, at what point do we say, you got to work for yourselves, and you got to, this is why we have the big deficits. This is why we have that amount of debt that's been placed on our heads over the last number of years, and we're really not taking it anymore. Through non-tariff barriers, the European Union bans imports of most American poultry. You understand? They say, we want to send you our cars, we want to send you everything, but we're not going to take anything that you have. Australia bans, and they're wonderful people and wonderful everything, but they ban American beef, yet we imported $3 billion of Australian beef from them just last year alone. They won't take any of our beef. They don't want it because they don't want it to affect their farmers. And you know what? I don't blame them, but we're doing the same thing right now, starting about midnight tonight, I would say. And China charges American rice farmers an overquota, it's called, a tariff rate of 65%. South Korea charges 50%. Actually, they charge different, from 50% to 513%. And Japan, our friend, charges us 700%. But that's because they don't want us selling rice, another thing. Who can blame them, Madam Secretary? Agriculture, great job you did on eggs, by the way. The egg prices came down 50%. You got them down 50%. Once we got involved, they were going through the sky. The egg prices, they were going through the sky, and you did a fantastic job. Now we have lots of eggs, and they're much cheaper, down about 59% now, and they're going down further. We charge 2.8% for so many things that other countries are charging 200%, 300%, and 400% for. If imposing tariffs and protective barriers made nations poor, then every country on earth would be racing to eliminate these policies, and China would be the first on line. They run a very strong country, but they're not first in line, and the American people are paying a very big price. From 1789 to 1913, we were a tariff-backed nation, and the United States was proportionately the wealthiest it has ever been. So wealthy, in fact, that in the 1880s, they established a commission to decide what they were going to do with the vast sums of money they were collecting. We were collecting so much money so fast, we didn't know what to do with it. Isn't that a nice problem to have? What do you think, Marco? Good problem? Marco would love that problem. But we don't have that problem anymore, but we're not going to have it very much longer, I will tell you. But they collected so much money, they actually formed a commission to determine what they were going to do with the money, who they were going to give it to, and how much. Then in 1913, for reasons unknown to mankind, they established the income tax so that citizens, rather than foreign countries, would start paying the money necessary to run our government. Then in 1929, it all came to a very abrupt end with the Great Depression, and it would have never happened if they had stayed with the tariff policy. It would have been a much different story. They tried to bring back tariffs to save our country, but it was gone. It was gone. It was too late. Nothing could have been done. It took years and years to get out of that depression, far longer than even FDR had that office right over there for a long period of time. The ramp system, it's rather intricate, was built because of him, and every time you walk up, you think of him, and he did a great job in many ways, but it lasted long beyond his terms, as you know. But it's not too late any longer, and we're going to start being smart, and we're going to start being very wealthy again. We're going to be wealthy as a country because they've taken so much of our wealth away from us. We're not going to let that happen. We truly can be very wealthy. We can be so much wealthier than any country. It's not even believable, but we're getting smart. Nearly a century later, in the face of unrelenting economic warfare, the United States can no longer continue with a policy of unilateral economic surrender. We cannot pay the deficits of Canada, Mexico, and so many other countries. We used to do it. We can't do it anymore. We take care of countries all over the world. We pay for their military. We pay for everything they have to pay, and then when you want to cut back a little bit, they get upset that you're not taking care of them any longer. But we have to take care of our people, and we're going to take care of our people first, and I'm sorry to say that. And today we're standing up for the American worker, and we are finally putting America first. In Sleepy Joe Biden's last year in office, the United States hemorrhaged 100,000 manufacturing jobs, and the number was going through the roof at levels never seen before. And our trade deficit reached a record $1.2 trillion, which is unheard of. Since the beginning of NAFTA, the worst trade deal ever made, it was a horror show. I was able to determine it. They all said you'd never be able to get it out. We had to get approval from Congress to get it terminated. We had to live with that deal. It was the worst deal, worst trade deal ever made by far. But since the very beginning of NAFTA, our country lost 90,000 factories. Think of what that is, 90,000. Think about putting a map up and putting tax on it. You wouldn't have enough room. 90,000. I said, is that possible? We had it checked 4 different times, and it was actually somewhat higher than that. And 5 million manufacturing jobs were lost while racking up trade deficits of $19 trillion. That was the worst trade deal ever made. As a result of these gigantic losses, foreign nations now own $26 trillion more of American assets than think of this, than the Americans own of their own foreign assets or other foreign assets. The United States can no longer produce enough antibiotics to treat our sick. We have a tremendous problem. We have to go to foreign countries to treat our sick. If anything ever happened from a war standpoint, we wouldn't be able to do it. We import virtually all of our computers, phones, televisions, and electronics. We used to dominate the field, and now we import it all from different countries. A single shipyard in China now produces more ships every year than all of the American shipyards combined. Think of that. And it was a business that we used to dominate. We used to dominate it totally. In short, chronic trade deficits are no longer merely an economic problem. They're a national emergency that threatens our security and our very way of life. It's a very great threat to our country. And for these reasons, starting tomorrow, the United States will implement reciprocal tariffs on other nations. It's been a long time since we even thought of that. We used to think about it a lot. We didn't think about it for many decades, and you see what's happened. For nations that treat us badly, we will calculate the combined rate of all their tariffs, non-monetary barriers, and other forms of cheating. And because we are being very kind, we're kind people, very kind. You're not so kind when you got ripped off with your salaries. My auto worker friends and my Teamster friends and all of the unions that typically voted Democrat, they're not voting Democrat anymore because worker, whether union or non-worker, they're for the Republicans now. That's what happened. But we will charge them approximately half of what they are and have been charging us. So the tariffs will be not a full reciprocal. I could have done that, yes, but it would have been tough for a lot of countries who didn't want to do that. I'd like to see the chart if you have it. Could you bring it up, Howard? This is our great Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick. Thanks, Howard. So if you look at that, China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. So 67%, I think you can, for the most part, see it. Those with good eyes, with bad eyes. We didn't want to bring, it's very windy out here. We didn't want to bring out the big charts because it had no chance of standing. Fortunately, we came armed with a little smaller chart. So it's 67%, so we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less. So how can anybody be upset? They will be because we never charge anybody anything, but now we're going to charge. European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You know, you think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half. Vietnam, great negotiators, great people. They like me, I like them. The problem is they charge us 90%. We're going to charge them 46% tariff. Taiwan, where they took all of our computer chips and semiconductors. We used to be the king, right? We were everything. We had all of it. Now we have almost none of it, except the biggest company is coming in. We're going to end up with almost 40%. Lee Zeldin's working to get their approvals. And it's an amazing company. Mr. Wei, of one of the great companies of the world, actually. They're coming in from Taiwan, and they're going to build one of the biggest plants in the world, maybe the biggest for that. But 64%, we're going to charge them 32%. Japan, very, very tough, great people. And again, I don't blame the people for doing it. I think they're very smart in doing it. I blame the people that sat right in that Oval Office right over there. right behind the Resolute desk or whichever desk they chose. Japan, 46%. They would charge us 46% and much higher for certain items like cars, little items like cars. 46%, we're charging them 24%. India, very, very tough, very, very tough. The Prime Minister just left, and he's a great friend of mine, but I said, you're a friend of mine, but you're not treating us right. They charge us 52%. You have to understand, we charge them almost nothing for years and years and decades, and it was only 7 years ago when I came in, we started with China charging. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China in tariffs, and they understood, honestly. President Xi understood. He said, look, I understand, and the other countries, and they all understand. We're going to have to go through a little tough love, maybe, but they all understand. They're ripping us off, and they understood it. Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. He was a fantastic man. He was unfortunately taken from us, assassination. But I went to him and I said, Shinzo, we have to do something. A trade is not fair. And he said, I know that. I know that. And he was a great gentleman. He was a fantastic man, but he understood immediately what I was talking about. I said, Shinzo, we have to do something. He said, I know that. And we worked out a deal, and it would have been a much better deal, but frankly, there were many years left on the deal that was made previous to my getting there, but it was something. If you look at Switzerland, 61% to 31%, Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia, oh, look at Cambodia, 97%. We're going to bring it down to 49. They made a fortune with the United States of America. United Kingdom, 10%, and we'll go 10%. So we'll do the same thing. South Africa, 60%, 30%, and they've got some bad things going on in South Africa. We're paying them billions of dollars, and we cut the funding because a lot of bad things are happening in South Africa. The fake news ought to be looking at it. They don't want to report it. Brazil, 10%, 10%. Bangladesh is 74%. So you see what's going on. Pakistan, 58%. Sri Lanka, 88%. So what we're doing is we're taking not the full, we could take the full 88%. Thanks a lot, Eric. He's doing a very good job. How's he doing, all right? I think you better take it with you. It's not going to last very long. He's going to put it, it's going to follow you down with the wind. I brought a hat just in case it got too windy, but here, would anybody like a hat? I'm not giving it to a cabinet. I'm giving it to the auto workers. Come here. Thank you, fellas. Get it. That's it. That's it. They deserve it more than our cabinet. Our cabinet has plenty of hats. But you see the numbers. The numbers are so disproportionate. They're so unfair. At the same time, we will establish a minimum baseline tariff of 10%. You notice that on the chart. And that'll be on other countries to help rebuild our economy and to prevent cheating. So we're going to have a minimum of cheating, and we're going to be very severe on the people that at the gate that watch the tariffs and watch the product coming in, because there's been a lot of bad things happening at the gate because the money is so enormous that you're talking about. There's never been probably anything like it in terms of the enormity, and there are a lot of bad things happen at the people that do the check-in, and they're looking at 10-year jail sentences if they do play. We're going to treat them so good, but if they cheat, the repercussions are going to be extremely strong. Foreign nations will finally be asked to pay for the privilege of access to our market, the biggest market in the world. We're right now the biggest market in the world. We had a great country 4 years ago in terms of the economics. We were doubling up on China. We were doing so well. Nobody was going to catch us, but so much of it slipped away over the last 4 years under Biden. I campaigned on this policy throughout last year, and today that promise was made, and it was also a promise, as you know, that was kept. Promises made, promises kept. To any company that objects to our common sense reciprocal tariffs, again, reciprocal, back and forth, back and forth. And I call this kind reciprocal. This is not full reciprocal. This is kind reciprocal. But What we do is we cut it in half. We charge them. My answer is very simple. If they complain, if you want your tariff rate to be zero, then you build your product right here in America, because there is no tariff if you build your plant, your product in America. And we've seen companies coming in like we've never seen before. Likewise to all of the foreign presidents, prime ministers, kings, queens, ambassadors, and everyone else who will soon be calling to ask for exemptions from these tariffs. I say, terminate your own tariffs, drop your barriers, don't manipulate your currencies. They manipulate their currencies like nobody can even believe, which is a bad, bad thing and very devastating to us. And start buying tens of billions of dollars of American goods. Tariffs give our country protection against those that would do us economic harm. And many people were looking to do us economic harm. Maybe not so obviously, but they were doing tremendous economic harm. But even more importantly, they will give us growth. These tariffs are going to give us growth like you haven't seen before. And it'll be something very special to watch. I am so looking forward. And Brian, it's going to happen even faster than you said. You know, you might say, but it's already started. It's already started. Work's already begun on plants all around the country. And you see that as before. These are big, rich companies. We have $61 billion started on a big plant going up. It's going to be announced over the next 2 days, and they already started work. Many of these the biggest companies in the world, they've committed to build. We're going to build, sir. And they came here to see me, and they wanted to know if they could have a press conference. I do as many as I can. I'm pretty busy trying to stop Russia and Ukraine and the Middle East. We got to stop that. We got to stop the Houthis, which we're making tremendous. They like shooting ships down and out of the water, sinking ships. They get a kick out of it, but they're not getting such a kick out of it now, are they, Mr. Secretary? They're not getting such a kick out of that now. But here are just a short list of some of the companies that have already announced and committed to investment. And this is a company that built its factories and its plants in China. Apple is going to spend $500 billion. They never spent money like that here. They're going to build their plants here. SoftBank, OpenAI, and Oracle, great companies, are investing $500 billion almost immediately. NVIDIA, a hot company, is investing hundreds of billions of dollars. They just announced. TSMC, the biggest, most important company in the world of chips from Taiwan, with no investment from us, is investing $200 billion. And they said the reason was, number one, the election of November 5th, and number two, the tariffs. They don't want to pay the tariffs, and the way they're not paying it is to build their plant here. So we're going to go from almost no percentage. We used to have 100% of the chip market. Now it's all in Taiwan. Almost all of it's in Taiwan. A couple of other countries, but mostly in Taiwan. And think of it. We had 100%. We lost it because of people in that office that didn't do their job. They allowed it to be stolen from us. Johnson & Johnson, great company, $55 billion. Eli Lilly, $27 billion. Meta is investing $500 billion. Wow. DeMac is investing $20 billion. CMA, CGM, $20 billion. And then you have Merck and Clarios, Stellantis, General Motors, GE Aerospace, Honda, Nissan, Hyundai are all putting in billions and billions of dollars, and they're committed 100%. And we've never had, and this is after 2.5 months. This is after just a short, this all took place as soon as we came out with what everybody wanted to do. You know, I watched a gentleman today on television, he used to work with Lee Iacocca, a very respected automobile person, and he said, you know, because they're asking people, they try and get as many negative people as they can, but they can't find them too much. It's pretty hard to find in terms of what we're doing, especially when they see all this investment. They said, so tell me, what do you think of what Trump is doing from the automobile standpoint? He said, I can't believe it. Somebody is finally, he's an older guy, real pro, really top guy, with Lee Iacocca. He said, I never thought I'd see the day when this would happen. where somebody had the courage to go and do what has to be done. This is transforming our nation. Our entire nation is going to be transformed, not only with the cars, but on every single other item that's built. We're going to become an industrial powerhouse. And he said that so beautifully today. In fact, I'm going to find out, I'm going to get a tape. And Bruce, I'm going to get that tape and I'm going to send it to you out in Long Island, and you're going to play it for the people and all your union workers and your non-union workers out there. You got a pretty even split. But we have, so far, it looks like we're going to have about $6 trillion of investments, and you wouldn't do that in years in this country over the last number of years. $6 trillion, and that's going to be much higher by the end of the year. And think of what $6 trillion is. You wouldn't have even a small percentage of that under this other system. We're going to be an entirely different country, and it's going to be fantastic for the workers. It's going to be fantastic for everyone. There will never have been a transformation of a country like the transformation that's already happening in the United States of America. It's an incredible thing to watch, and it's incredible to meet with the top people, people that you read about, very wealthy people, or people that are great managers and executives and presidents of big public companies, and to watch the enthusiasm they have now that they didn't have. They gave up on our country. They went to foreign countries and they built. Companies are pouring into our country at levels never seen before, with jobs and money to follow, and it's really beautiful. In the coming days, there will be complaints from the globalists and the outsourcers and special interests and the fake news. Always, the fake news will always complain. But never forget, every prediction our opponents made about trade for the last 30 years has been proven totally wrong. They were wrong about NAFTA. They were wrong about China. They were wrong about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would have been a disaster if I didn't terminate it. If I didn't terminate that, United Auto Workers, you would have had no jobs in this country. You would have had no jobs. It was all going to other countries. In my first term, they said tariffs would crash the economy. Instead, we built the greatest economy in the history of the world. And again, I have great respect for President Xi of China, great respect for China, but they were taking tremendous advantage of us, and I commend them for that. I say, hey, if you can get away with it, that's okay. But, you know, they understand exactly what's happening, and they probably, most of them are saying it's about time they did something, but, and they're going to fight, and they're going to fight fair. Everyone's going to fight. You know, it's like, I say to the leaders, look, you got to take care of your country, but we have to start taking care of our country now. We can't do what we've been doing for the last 50 years. From the day of my election, the stock market went up in my first term 88%, with NASDAQ going up 155%, more than any president has ever had in any term in office, by far. And I think we're going to blow that away, and maybe the numbers won't show, but I think they're going to show much better than even those numbers. But what you're going to see is you're going to see activity, that empty, dead sites, factories that are falling down. Those factories will be knocked down, and they're going to have brand new factories built in their place. They're not only talking about renovating, they're talking about brand new, the best anywhere in the world, the biggest anywhere in the world. I have a friend who builds car plants, and I said, I want to see the biggest and the best. He said, well, we have to go to Mexico. I said, no, I want to see it in the United States. He said, we're not building them in there. This is a year and a half ago during the campaign. He said, we're not building it. You'd have to go to Mexico. When I was starting to decide to run, and I went to number one in the polls very rapidly, I want to say, like, let's say in the first hour. And then shortly thereafter, it looked like I was going to win, and the fake news was saying, oh, no, don't do this. What they don't know is if I didn't win, they would have really been in trouble, because nobody wants to read them anyway. But I tell you what, when it looked like I was going to win, I announced that I was going to be doing exactly what we're talking about today. Great consistency, actually, because I've been talking about it for 40 years. But because I saw what was happening 40 years ago. If you look at my old speeches when I was young, very handsome, my old speeches, and that people would say, I'd be on a television show, I'd be talking about how we were being ripped off by these countries. I mean, nothing changes very much. The only thing that changed were the countries, but nothing really changes. But it's why it's such an honor. It's such an honor to be finally able to do this. If you look at China, I took in hundreds of billions of dollars in my term, hundreds of billions. They never paid 10 cents to any other president, and yet they paid hundreds of billions, so much so that Biden couldn't do anything. They wanted to try and terminate it because he had a very special relationship with China. You know what the relationship was? He had a special relationship. But the numbers were so big, that they couldn't do it. So they did ease it up. They did things that they shouldn't have done. They made it a lot more comfortable for them, but they couldn't do it because the numbers were hundreds of billions of dollars, and I did that. And we were on our way to doing something like incredible. And then we had a very bad election happen, a very bad election. A lot of bad things happened. So when I said we got to do it again, I said we have to make it too big to rig. And we made it too big to rig, and we won in records, and it was a monumental win. And it was such an honor to see so many of you, like Brian and your friends, here with us to celebrate, and to more importantly celebrate what we're doing, because that wouldn't be a full celebration if we didn't do this, because this will be an entirely different country in a short period of time. It'll be something the whole world will be talking about it. The critics made the very tired predictions earlier this year, but in February, core inflation dropped to the lowest rate in 4 years, and the price of eggs, as you know, just in a month and a half, we were there for 4 weeks. And the first week I got blamed for eggs. I said, I just got here. They said eggs have gone up at like 250% and you can't get eggs. And they were going crazy. And I said, I just got here. And then we got to work on eggs. We got to work on everything. And our great Secretary of Agriculture, you did a fantastic job. Brooke Rollins, she did a fantastic job. And as I said before, the price of eggs dropped now 59%, and they're going down more, and the availability is fantastic. They were saying that for Easter, please don't use eggs. Could you use plastic eggs? I said, we don't want to do that. We want to, and you really came through. It's an amazing job. Thank you very much, Brooke. You did great. But likewise, an old-fashioned term that we use, groceries. I used it in the campaign. It's such an old-fashioned term, but a beautiful term, groceries. It sort of says a bag with different things in it. Groceries went through the roof, and I campaigned on that. I talked about the word groceries for a lot, and energy costs now are down. Groceries are down. Gasoline is way under $3, and people are beginning to be able to buy things and live again. We brought prices way down. We created 10,000 already in a few weeks, new manufacturing jobs. And it was that took place in 1 month, numbers that they haven't seen in a long time. We had virtually no inflation under my term. We had virtually no inflation for 4 years, but after transitioning over to Sleepy Joe, it went from almost non-existent to the highest in the history of our country. They had the highest inflation in the history of our country, brought up by energy and bad spending and bad policy, and a lot of bad things happened. How about allowing millions and millions and millions of people to pour into our country with open borders, where it's so sad to see even now. And I see our great secretary you have done. Stand up, please, Christy. Stand up. Christy Noem and Tom Homan. These people are doing a great job, but gotten them out in records. We have problems with judges that don't want them to go out. They want Tren de Aragua, and they want MS-13, the most vicious gangs ever. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Absolute killer gangs. They kill people. They don't even think about it. And we put them out, and we have judges now, radical left judges that they don't want them to go out. They want them to even be brought back. Let's bring them back. You've done a fantastic job, and please thank everybody. Homeland Security, thank everybody. Appreciate it. And we now have a border that's the best border that we've ever had, even better than it was my first term. My first term we did good, but this one we really specialized in. We've done really well. And we had records then. We had the best, safest border. 4 years ago, we had the best border there ever was. And now we have, you've actually matched it and done even better. And we're going to get it down the right way. And we want people, by the way, to come into our country, but we want them to come in through a legal process. We want them to come in legally. We need more people. We need people to run these plants and to help the auto workers and the Teamsters and the non-union people and everybody else. But we need people and the farmers. And we're going to let people come in, but they want to come in. We want them to come in legally. They have to have the capability of loving our country, not people that hate our country. We don't want them in our country. And now we're going to pass the largest tax cuts in American history, and that's where we're relying on Mike and John Thune. And we will not cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid benefits, and the Democrats will, because if they got in, the entire economy would collapse. This country was heading for a collapse under the people that you saw. They were horrible. I think one of the reasons people like the job, I have my highest approval ratings because I think they're comparing me to the worst administration in the history of our country, so I appreciate that at least. But Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader, appreciate it, Mike. John Thune have been fantastic, by the way. But they've been working tirelessly on taking the next step to pass the plan for our one big, beautiful bill. I'd like to name it that if you can. One big, I made that statement about 6 months ago, and everybody calls it one big, beautiful bill. And it will be that. It'll have everything, the big tax cuts and every incentive there is. And it'll be fantastic. And by the way, for the cars, we're asking for an interest deduction on a loan. So if you build the car only in America, we do it, Brian. If the car's not built in America, you don't get the interest rate deduction. But if you build the car in America, if you buy a car, if it's built in America, then you get an interest rate deduction, tax deduction, and that's a big thing. That's going to be a big thing. I think that's going to pay for itself very quickly, that deduction. Never happened. We've never had anything like that before. Somebody said, where do you get the idea? Because it's so basic. You would think that would have happened a long time ago. It never did, and I'm very happy it didn't because now I can say that was my idea. But we're going to get us closer to the debt extension. We have to get the debt extension passed, and I know you're going to be able to do that, Mike, and it's very important that you do that. And all of the other things that the Senate budget plan gives us, along with working, because I know they're working together, John and Mike, and the two bills are going very well together. We need to get our shared priorities done, including certain permanent tax cuts. We want the tax cuts to be permanent, spending cuts, energy and historic investments in defense, border, and so much more. We're covering everything. These will be phenomenal. There'll be no bill like this going to straighten. One bill is going to straighten out our country for many, many years to come. And we said, let's just do it and let's get it done. And some guys will love it and some guys will like it a little bit less because they're not getting what they were exactly looking for, but they're getting a lot. They'll never, if we get this done, it'll be the most incredible bill ever passed in the history of our Congress and Senate and congressmen, the senators and the congressmen, many of whom are here today, will be very proud of themselves. I really believe that. It's going to set us on a whole new prosperous path. We're going to cut spending and right-size the budget back to where it should be. We're going to do that very strongly. Thank you, Rick. Thank you. John, thank you. Oh, look at all of our senators over there. Oh, boy. That's a nice group of people. But I won't like them so much if they don't get this bill done. That's a great group. And Congressman, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Tremendous people. The Senate plan is my complete and total support, and the House plan likewise is very similar. They're moving along pretty much at the same clip, and as soon as you're ready, you'll show it to me, and I'm sure it'll have my support, Mike. Every Republican congressman and senator must unify. We have to unify. We can't be separated. We have to get it done. We have to get absolutely everything we can, and we have to take care of the American people. That's the only thing that matters. We have to take care of the American people first. We need to pass this bill immediately, get it done, including debt extension. From this day on, we're not going to let anyone tell us that American workers and families cannot have the future that they deserve. We're going to produce the cars and ships, chips, airplanes, minerals, and medicines that we need right here in America. The pharmaceutical companies are going to become roaring back. They're coming roaring back. They're all coming back to our country because if they don't, they got a big tax to pay. And if they do, I'll be very happy, and you're going to be very happy, and you're going to be very safe. We're going to build our future with American hands, with American heart, American steel, and we're going to build it with American pride like we used to. We're approaching our 100th day as president and have been given credit by a lot of people, actually, even some of the fake news. Can you believe it? Which in this case hopefully isn't fake, for having done more in that time than any other administration in the history of our country in the first 100 days. I think we've had an amazing, in terms of what we've done, what we've gotten accomplished. I'd like to see if we can get that war ended and another war from not starting in the Middle East. We have to get Russia. They're losing 2,000 on average, 2,500 people a day, young people, soldiers, Russian. Think of that, 2,500 through some days, but on average, probably over about a 1 week period, it's 2,712, they say. They're losing those soldiers. They're dying. They're being decimated. And they're not from our country, but they're from other countries. But they're human beings. They're from Russia. They're from Ukraine in this period, most of them. And we're going to get it stopped. It's a senseless war that would have never happened if I was president, and it shouldn't be allowed to go on. And I think we're being given good cooperation by Russia and by Ukraine, but we have to get it stopped. It's humanity. It's humanity. It's a terrible thing. This will be a very big moment. I think you're going to remember today. It's going to be a free nation that we're dealing with. We're going to have a very free and beautiful nation. It's going to be Liberation Day in America, and it's going to be a day that hopefully you're going to look back in years to come and you're going to say, you know, he was right. This has turned out to be one of the most important days in the history of our country. God bless you and God bless America. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We have two documents prepared for the president's signature today. One closes what's referred to as the de minimis loophole with respect to imports from the
Not even Hail Mary.
The other is the big one, is the reciprocal tariff executive order that the president just spoke about at length. This is obviously a huge deal, and it's been an honor to be part of the team getting started.
This is big stuff. That's a 10. That's a good one.
Mr. President, what do you say to American families who are worried they'll pay more?
And a big day at the White House. Of course, President Trump signing the executive orders for reciprocal tariffs. So it's very simple. If a country sends tariffs our direction, we send back that same amount of tariff. If not, it can be renegotiated. Of course, everything negotiated on this table with the deal-making president, but detailed list that he shared with us with the charts as well of each and every country that will be facing these reciprocal tariffs, especially China. And part of that, the president detailing some of the war games that the Chinese military and navy deploying up against the free island country of Taiwan. And because Taiwan is doing a lot of business with the United States, perhaps President Trump and Xi Jinping testing just how far each man is committed to making sure that they are number one, not just for themselves, but for their respective countries. So a complicated world with President Trump making America wealthy again in the process, stating that $6 trillion or even more can be poured into the United States. We know billions and billions have already come in the form most recently in Hyundai and Toyota. So great things for car manufacturing. Of course, the United Auto Workers in attendance celebrating with President Trump these reciprocal tariffs. It is once again Liberation Day in America, and President Trump seeing to it and looking forward to the legislation in the Senate and the House that he says he is looking forward to supporting and offering his signature. Thank you to our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, and of course, Angel Paste, one of our finest here at the network, the Miracle Cream. Experience the miracle today at angelpaste.com. So many different options to work with, whether you have the dry hands and you need nice, really refreshed hands. You would go with this option here, the vitamin B infused Miracle Cream, the original product of Angel Paste. And it is non-GMO, no chemicals, everything that can be absorbed into your skin without worrying about, getting sick or even putting chemicals on your skin like other products perhaps. But experiencing the miracle at angelpaste.com also includes other great products, including a facial spray to get you ready to paint the town red and enjoy an evening out, but also the orange option filled with vitamin C. It's immunity-based and protects you from cold and flu season. They also have a wonderful mosquito repellent, all natural. Come on Spring, Texas, a Christian-based company hiring veterans. Thank you to angelpaste.com for sponsoring us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. And Kalshi, you're probably familiar with this great organization where you could bet yesterday on who would win the Supreme Court seat. We saw this during the election. Sadly, the left-winger won yesterday, but election integrity making further steps in Wisconsin, now requiring proof of ID to be presented before voting. That was up for a referendum, and it was made in the affirmative. So scan that QR code now. See all the different trades that you could use at kalshi.com/RSBN to legally bet on elections and contests going throughout the United States. Thank you also to mypillow.com/RSBN. The spring sheet sale in full swing. The Giza Dream sheets, the Parakel sheets, the queen size going for $29.98. That's 50% off. So what a great deal. Thank you to Mike Lindell. mypillow.com/RSBN. Of course, thinking about running for governor of Minnesota. We've heard some reports. Maybe we can have him on for an interview, an exclusive, to find out if that announcement will come here on Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. We'd love to hear about that. Thank you to Mike Lindell. mypillow.com/RSBN. 2,000 items for up to 50% off everything. The best way to get your day started is with a good night's rest, and mypillow.com/RSBN does it best. Thank you for sponsoring us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. And it's 5 o'clock somewhere on the East Coast, specifically 2 o'clock on our beautiful West Coast. From sea to shining sea, we love the viewers here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. So if you want any America First updates and exclusive offers on a daily basis, feel free to subscribe at rsbnetwork.com/newsletter. That's on the house. You can follow us on your favorite social media platforms. Please like, share, and subscribe, because sometimes you hear people saying, I didn't realize that this great network has gone from the rallies to now a live desk and breaking news coverage of everything America First inside and outside the Beltway. So you can find also great writers on the site as well for long form that are outside of the broadcast. And if you can donate, we do appreciate that dearly here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live, as we are citizen journalists. Visit rsbnetwork.com/donate or text RSBN to 801-801. That is RSBN to 801-801 for all of your America First updates. Thank you for your consideration. And truly, it's wonderful, whether it's at CPAC, on the campaign trail, and talking to great patriots like yourselves at home and abroad. Always wonderful to hear that, hey, I gave some money here, I gave some money there, and we are deeply, deeply grateful for that, because we're up against some conglomerates and those big corporate types that have endless resources, but we're thankful for you, nonetheless, for giving your hard-earned dollars for citizen journalism and for bringing you unbridled access to President Trump, Vice President Vance, the 119th Congress, and the stories that matter to you in this beautiful country. So a big day today. Of course, you had the House GOP oversight, really a House committee hearing. It happened to have some Democrats on there who were spewing far-left talking points, but that's okay. It's all part of a day's work in Washington, D.C., really diving into what the FBI was doing under AutoPen, and hopefully that never happens again. To have a weaponized DOJ is a terrible thing. Crossfire Hurricane, President Trump has released those records. We're looking at them right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. We hope our colleagues throughout the media do the same and give the people what they are looking for, transparency. We saw it yesterday as well with the House hearing on the JFK files. So stick with us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live for all America First updates and exclusive offers. Well, it is that 5 o'clock somewhere in the beautiful nation's capital, Washington, D.C. You see that live shot there of the White House, where we witnessed President Trump signing an executive order to push forth the reciprocal tariffs, Liberation Day in America. If there's any breaking news, tune in right here to catch all of that live. But otherwise, we will see you on the docket tomorrow. Always a pleasure to be with you. I'm Robert McNeely. For my colleagues here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, good night. God bless. We'll see you soon.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
I hear every day about the products you all wish MyPillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard MyPillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely